I call the Truckee Meadows Water Authority Board meeting to order at 10 o'clock. So I go ahead and ask for a roll call, please.
Anderson.
Here.
Andriola.
Present.
Dewar.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Martinez.
Here.
Taylor is absent. Vanderwell.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
William. Here. We have a quorum, Chair.
Okay, if we could go ahead and do the pledge of allegiance. There's a flag. Okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just really quick before we call for public comment, I'm just going to let everyone know that this is the annual meeting and the strategic planning meeting. And just in terms of timing, that we're going to shoot for noon as a break for approximately 15 minutes and then have essentially a working lunch. However, we'll do a pulse read on time. And if it looks like we are moving through, I'll again ask the board if they just like to essentially power through it if the time is close enough to that noon break. So just wanted to give everyone a lay of the land of timing. So thank you. We'll move now to public comment.
I do not have any public comment. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your hand. I do not have anybody.
Thank you. We'll move now to board comments or acknowledgements. Anybody have anything? We are going to be done by noon. Yeah, I guess the lunch was a motivation, so thank you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the agenda unless there's any changes. Anyone would like to know?
Move to approve.
We have a motion by member Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, by member Vanderwell. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move now to the approval of the minutes of September 17th, 2025 meeting of the TMWA Board of Directors. Do we have any changes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion by, I couldn't hear.
Vanderwell.
And second by member Martinez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We move now to our water supply update. Ms. Hewlett.
Morning, board. I have a brief water supply update for you. The 2025 water year ended on September 30th and the 2026 water year started on October 1st. So we are in our new water year now. So I'm going to give a brief overview of how the 2025 water year kind of shaped up. And then obviously it's very early in the new water year, so we don't have too much to share, but I'll show you some of what the modeling shows for the 2026 water year. And you'll have updates come throughout the winter as we see what the winter holds for us. So this graph here should be familiar to many of you. This is the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, their snow water equivalent for the Truckee Basin. There are snow measuring sites throughout the basin. And so this is the kind of the combination of all of those sites. And you can see the middle line, a little hard to tell a color there, but sort of a bluish color is the 2025 water year. And the green line with the star on top, that is median. So you can see we are about as close to median as you can get. So we had a really average water year, which is great news for us. That was our third above average or average year in a row. So we still had a really good water supply upstream and had a normal year. And again, the snow water equivalent is the amount of water in the snowpack. So basically, if the snow was to melt, how much water do we get in inches? So that's a really important measurement for us. Not just snow depth, but actually the density of that snow and water's in it. Again, looking at precipitation here, similar story. It's almost hard to see the difference between the green and the blue line. We were right at median here as well across the basin. And then soil moisture is also important, especially as we get into the new water year. The wetter the soil, the more efficient the runoff is in the spring, meaning that less of that water soaks into the soil and infiltrates, and more of it ends up in our rivers and reservoirs. And so having medium or above medium soil moisture is also great. And you can see we had pretty much median moisture, and with these kind of late summer storms we had and now early fall storms, we are kind of well above average for soil moisture. So as long as that holds, more efficient runoff in the spring. So good news already. Looking at the projections, so the blue line is observed, so actual, and the yellow or orangish color is projected. And so this is the elevation of Lake Tahoe, and that's one of the best kind of barometers for health of our water supply, with Lake Tahoe above the rim, significantly above the rim means we're going to have normal river flows. And so you can see here, Lake Tahoe filled 2 years ago, got close to filling this last year. And just looking at the historic hydrology, it's modeled to stay fairly full through next water year. So all the way through the summer and into the fall. Again, these are just projections. We have no idea what this winter holds. So this is what we're anticipating looking at historic hydrologies. The Water Master's office does modeling for us on a regular basis that looks at all of the data. And so similar story with projected river flows as well, looking at pretty much average river flows, maintaining those Florissant rates, the required rate of flow within the California-Nevada state line through next water year. So all around a great story. We're in really good shape from a water supply perspective, expected to have normal operations through the next water year. Apologize, it's a little hard to see the differentiation in colors on this. This is our upstream storage. We're at about 40,000 acre feet with our storage in Independence and Donner, and then the storage we have in the federally owned reservoirs in Stampede and Boca. And so that's pretty much what we typically have at this time of year, if we're not in a drought situation, is about 40,000 acre feet. And overall system storage is about 70,000 or 70% of total storage, which also is great for this time of year. Lastly, we are kind of on the cusp right here. This is the drought monitor. This is from last week. It could have changed. They put them out on Thursdays, so it might look a little bit different after this storm. But we are basically not in a drought or in, we are kind of on the cusp of being in abnormally dry conditions. But again, started the water year, so it'll change as we move along. And looking at the upcoming forecast, it's looking promising with a 6 to 10 days showing that we have a increased chance of precipitation compared to average and lower temperatures. So fall seems like it ended quickly, but it's good for water supply. So we will see what the winter holds, but we don't have too much information at this point in time. But overall in great shape. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I think it's pretty appropriate that we've actually been in the rain having this meeting.
I agree.
So, and enjoyed a nice drive last night at my windshield wiper setting at full max. And I've not done that in a while. So let it pour steadily.
Yes.
Any questions? Well, thank you, Ms. Steelan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll move now to the item 8, which is the discussion and action and possible direction to staff regarding the approval of the TMWA 2025-2045 Water Resource Plan. And Ms. Steelan and Mr. Bugler. Hello.
Hi again. So very brief agenda item today for the Water Resource Plan. So I'm here today to present the final version of the plan. It is the same version that you saw in the September meeting. So we are effectively just looking for approval at this point in time. We also finalized the at-a-glance report, which you saw last time around. And both of those are available online in the links on the staff report. We also have printed hard copies of the at-a-glance report if any of the board members are interested in having one of those for reference. I also just want to thank the board for all of your valuable input during the planning process. It really helped make the plan be the best version of that it could be. I also want to give kudos to the communications team here at TMWA who did an amazing job getting the plan formatted. And they also were able to get the at-a-glance version translated into Spanish, which was the first time we've done that. So that's going to be really helpful, I think, for members of our community. And we're also developing several short videos with subject matter experts that are going to be included on the Water Resource Plan webpage. So kind of a more interactive version for those that would rather listen than kind of read. And so we're excited about this plan that's going to help guide us over the next 5 years. And that, I'll turn it over to Eddie if he has anything to add.
I just wanted to come up and thank Cara for her hard work on this plan. She heard a lot of cats and got a lot of data together, and she's already brainstorming for the next year or the next plan in 5 years. So we're going to take a little break, but we're going to get right away started on the next one. So just wanted to thank her for all her hard work and organizing it all. It's a big lift.
Also wanted to thank Councilmember Martinez for doing the Spanish language version for that video introduction to the water resource plan.
Thank you.
Where would we get the executive summary or the short form?
Yeah, so we have the hard copies, and then also in the staff report, it's at TMWA.com/
At a glance.
at a glance.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember it was WT at a glance or at a glance. Do you want a copy number? Good. We'll get you the Spanish.
Yes.
Well, while the distribution of hard copies are happening, does anybody have any questions? Mr. Anderson?
No question. I just want to say, awesome. I mean, I love the at a glance one. And it's perfect for those engagements like that I have with folks, and you can tell whether or not they're kind of interested or they kind of want to find out some stuff. But what is so cool is they get to go in there and you have links to in-depth reporting and more information for them. It's not only is it vibrant and exciting, but just the way that you cover the material is amazing. So well done. I truly appreciate it.
Any other questions? Thank you for all your hard work. So he didn't add feral cats. I bet there were a few feral cats. You never know. You never know. Hearing no other questions or discussion, this is an actionable item and would entertain a motion at this time. Okay, we have a motion by member Anderson and a second.
Harmony.
Oh, by member Dorr, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Before we move on.
Oh, we have a hand raised. Okay. We have
Before we move
somebody-
on, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thanks too, and I know this car was one of the first years that you really put the climate change information in to the level that you did, and that you did this at a glance, because I agree with Member Anderson that, you know, it's really fantastic to have this kind of digestible document for the public, especially.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have someone who is wanting to ask a question online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hey, this is Trista Gomez. And I heard about this hearing yesterday at the commission meeting, so thank you for talking about it. My question is, and I don't know if this comes up with this item or a different item, you know, in the valleys, you see an increase in problems with wells and groundwater problems and these kinds of things. And this has been all anecdotal so far, with residents really talking about it amongst themselves, you know, them talking about it in meetings, always with the assurance that there's plenty of groundwater, plenty of water in general. You know, their wells are telling a different story, but that's what we have been told. And then obviously this last story of from This Is Reno talked about that there was a decline in groundwater and that it was concerning. And so this is the first sort of a more official report that we've seen on this issue of declining groundwater and the problems that that could cause. Also, there was the vote on the data centers, and you know, I know that there was a couple people who had voted no on the data centers specifically because of the water usage. And I feel like when I'm looking at anything, and this is the first meeting that I've been to as far as the TMWA, I am looking at the information that you're giving, but it seems to contrast with what homeowners or residents are seeing with groundwater. And I don't know if that's this item or a different item, but if somebody could address that or let me know when that's going to be addressed, that would be great.
I think that there's some deep complexity to your question that is warranted to have the time to answer. I also will take this opportunity to thank all of the folks at TMWA who presented at the Spanish Springs CAB the details to many of the questions that are being asked. So what I would recommend, and I will defer to legal as well, this isn't necessarily an agendized item to that particular request of information, and maybe if it's okay with legal, I would like to recommend that Ms. Gomez actually contact Tom will contact Ms. Gomez and then go over that if that's what legal is also agreeing with.
Yeah, I would recommend, because this isn't an agendized item. Maybe Ms. Gomez can send her information into TMWA and we can have someone reach out to her who would be more appropriate to talk about that issue.
And I have her email and I'm happy to
Okay.
actually help facilitate that if there's some clarity on her, making sure that she's connected. So
Yeah.
I hope, Ms. Gomez, you understand that I am asking legal for clarification. This isn't an agendized item, but your question is important to be answered. And again, we've had the pleasure at the Spanish Springs Cab to have those questions answered in detail. And thank you for all the expertise in that regard. So hearing that, we'll make sure Ms. Gomez is actually connected appropriately and her questions answered. So thank you. So we're going to go ahead and move now to the item number 9, which is the overview of TMWA's water facility planning process. Mr. Rotter and Mr. Kershaw.
Thank you. Well, she's getting that loaded there. Danny Rotter, Director of Engineering in this regard, for the record.
Dave Kershaw, Engineering Manager for New Business and Plan.
And so Dave's going to go through a lot of this in detail, but I think what I wanted to convey to you is that we're always planning. As soon as one planning effort starts, Cara, you heard Eddie talk about, she's already thinking about the next one. The last time we did a facility plan, we started thinking about the next one. And so that's something that's just ingrained in our process and in our way we're going about it. Next slide. And you've seen this graphic over and over again, and we talk about it a lot because it's what we do all the time. So the 2025 to 2045 water resource plan is the basis for everything that we're doing moving forward, which you just approved. So good job with that. And then we take that and move it into facilities. So basically managing the resource, how much water do we need? Meeting the customer demand, where is that water going to go, and what infrastructure is needed to serve that? And so we do that every 5 years, looking out 20 years and beyond. And then every year we're looking at a 5-year funding plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so each of these pieces are continuously feeding into each other and adjusting and looking at things like climate change and looking at things like max day demands and area growth and what you all as entities are approving for growth and where those things might shift and change. And so I'll hand it off to Dave from here to give you some more of the background of what goes into a facility plan now that we're done with a resource plan and onto a facility.
All right. And Dave Kershaw, Engineering Manager for what I'd like to go over kind of 2 different things. Initially, kind of the water facility plan update, kind of the process we go through our schedule in regards to it. Then kind of a new business summary, brief overview of where things are at today. And so, again, as Dan alluded to, as soon as the water resource plan is done, we start building our water facility plan based on some projected growth and information in the water resource plan. And we do that every 5 years, roughly. One thing I want to just reiterate, you guys have seen this before in regards to board policy, growth pays for growth. And so ultimately the water facility plan, once we get that updated, we then jump into update the water system facility charges or connection fees. What's basically new development pays as part of getting service from TMWA. And this slide just kind of shows different categories for its water system facility charges. So we have kind of 3 subcategories: areas, storage, and supply and treatment. So what we're trying to do when we identify growth facilities is allocate those costs appropriately to growth that occurs in various areas of our system. So you can kind of see that map on the side. I know it's fairly small, but those are the area fees, and then certain area fees also have supply and treatment and storage. So storage is for the tanks, supply and treatment for the wells and treatment. Water system facility charges are basically applied based on maximum day GPM or gallons per minute. That's an estimate on the development. And then again, just to reiterate, the WSF charge or connection fees are not paid by existing customers and are not included in the water rates. They're definitely growth-based rates that are applied to new development. And so this is kind of just a slide that summarizes the legacies of the updates that have occurred over the years. And so you can see the various years that have been developed. And then the last one was completed in 2023 or 2020 to 2040 facility plan update. You know, since the water resource plan has just been completed and finalized, we're starting to move forward this month in regards to the update for the 2045 water facility plan update. And again, it provides a roadmap of capital improvements or facilities that are needed to meet demands, future demands associated with development and an existing system. This slide just kind of gives a history or a legacy of where our projections have been in the past and where we're going in the future at this point. And so you can kind of see the squiggly blue line there is what we see in regards to our maximum data demand that has occurred over the last couple of years here from 2010 to 2025. And then the projections there, the dashed lines above are kind of what our projections were historically from the previous facility plans. The red line and black line, so the red line is the current estimate based on projections from the water resource plan and where things are at as we start to get into it. So that may shift a little bit as we get into our new facility plan. And so that's where we think things are going. The black line was our last facility plan. So you can see they're very similar in regards to order of magnitude and slope of that line compared to the previous ones. And so probably is a couple things I want to summarize in the past and how things might have changed. We've kind of seen a general trend of reduction of peak data demand, peaking factors, annual usage in regards to per unit, per capita type usage out there. And some of the things that may be attributing to that reduction per unit per capita, which is actually reducing our peak demands that we're projecting, metering of all services, tiered rates, structure, potentially remodeling of older structures out there, making them more efficient in regards to how they use water, when they use water, changing in landscaping type, less lawn, definitely impacts those peaking factors as well. Drought conservation, drought hardening of demands. So when people go through a drought, they tend to reduce the amount of water they use potentially, and then they actually hold after that, even if we have a normal year. So that can all apply to how we're kind of seeing that peak predictions in regards to max day demands out there. And probably a couple other things to note is too, if you look at and it's not on this graph, but if you look at the last 15 to 20 years, our peak day demand has really been flat. We haven't grown much, if at all. When we go back 15 years, we still have about the same peak day demand. So we're having both reduced existing customer demand even as we're growing out there. And I just went to a conference this last week here in Reno. It was kind of interesting. There were a couple of presentations from a national perspective, looking at different cities across the United States. And it really correlated very well in regards to what we see here locally is reductions in unit or per capita demand usage rates, whether it's the East Coast, West Coast, South, or North, both inside structures and external to structure. So it's kind of neat to see that correlation of what we're seeing is actually matching stuff across the nation to some degree. So as we get into the water facility plan update, there's kind of a process we go through, and we really get into the details of existing demand use data from our meter billing systems. And so we start processing that, and on a hold right there. And I would really like to acknowledge the planning engineers who are doing the heavy lift on that. So they're all sitting behind me. Holly, Brooke, Jason, and Tim are the people who are really doing the heavy lifting on developing this facility plan, in addition to their normal work with this supporting the capital engineering group, facilities, maintenance, operations, as well as new business work as well, so. Anyways, thank you.
You have to stay the whole time. So.
Work to do.
So the process again, so we use a lot of the existing billing data and get our models and mass, our spreadsheets updated in regards to what we see in regards to the existing demands in the last few years. We get the models calibrated. And then after that, we start assembling and converting what the water resource plan has shown for growth into a peak day demand factor or value. And we then distribute both spatially and over time as well throughout the system. So once we get all that information in there, we start running these models and looking at what infrastructure might still need to be needed to build, to provide service and meet NAC and TMWA design criteria based on a new growth being predicted and distributed throughout. And I'll have another slide here next, which kind of talks about allocation. That's a whole other level of effort. And so the whole process is, so once we figure out what the facilities are that are needed, they get that 20-year build out. Then we also identify the timing of those facilities, estimate the costs, and then that all goes into the connection fees at the tail end of the project or the update. And so one of the significant efforts here is allocating those demands that we're projecting. Where is that occurring in our system, whether it's core, out to the north, the south. And so we kind of pull in a bunch of information that we have available to us in regards to some of that information comes from regional planning. Some of it's internal, some of it's via discussion with developers out there and just kind of knowing the system as a whole. And then going through a process of allocating where we place those demands. And then each planning engineer will go into their specific area and look at vacant land uses and really try to specifically allocate those new demands into that area. Then we run the models and figure out, oh yeah, you know, we got a bunch of demand out here. We needed to build another booster pump station or a transmission main and make sure we capture those costs into the rates. When I say rates, connection fees. And so at this point in time, our preliminary our timeline for developing this water facility plan update is start this month, and hopefully in a year's time, we'll bring something forward to the board for approval. The intent. After we do that, the intent would be jump into an update in regards to the water service facility charges, connection fees, and probably based on the schedule right now, real preliminary, looking at April, May, well, I should say April and May of 2027 for the first and second reading by the board, and then implementation in July 1st, 2027. And just so everyone knows, the last time we updated the rates was July 1st, 2024. And before I leave this topic, is there any questions at this point in regards to the water facility plan update before I get into the business summary?
We have a question from Member Anderson.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've never thought about it before in regard to what falls under the facility side of it. So to me, I'm thinking of like Chalk Bluff, maybe even like a well facility. But like our next item is talking about the infrastructure underneath the roadways and such. What actually constitutes the facility side of it?
In regards to the water facility plan and the WSF fees, we're looking at kind of major facilities that are regionally serve or benefit. And we look at them both for existing and new business in regards to an area. And those are the ones we will try to capture as part of the WSF fees, ones that kind of serve this regional area that would include growth in existing facilities and allocate the costs appropriately in that area. Developers will have on-site facilities that they will be required to build and fund. And then they'll end up paying some of these fees. And then there may be some developments in particular that, hey, they also need to build some off-site that specifically serves them. And so that will be all on them to do. And so a lot of what we're looking at is, this facility looks at both those infrastructures, but we do pull out stuff that's regionally based that could be assigned to water service facility charges too.
Which could include the lines themselves.
Yes, yep, transmission, booster pump station, regulator, pressure regulator stations, tanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Dave, can you touch on, maybe real quick, to Paul's question too, just the supply, 3 minute storage, the breakdown there?
Yeah, so we do have those classified too. So we built a bunch of infrastructure in regards to treatment, let's say. And so we're still recovering costs on that as well. Storage infrastructure we might have built as part of a previous project, and we're still recovering costs on that as well.
I think the other thing I was just gonna quickly add, related to the next item that we have, is one of the things we've done with this facility plan is we've also tried to add in the existing facilities and our asset management of those facilities for the long term. So we're diving in a little deeper in the next item about water mains specifically, but we've tried to also include that because historically this effort has just been forward looking at growth. But we've also been looking at, okay, well, what's forward looking for everything we already have as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And anything we do identify too, everything be aware of too, is anything we do identify, such as a pump station or whatnot, we look at our design standards. We want to make sure for the long term, basically forever, that infrastructure, we're looking at the value to the ratepayer, making sure we have redundancy, reliability, all that's built in. It's a stuff that we do identify as part of the business as well. Looking at, hey, what's the life cycle cost of this? What's the best value for that life cycle cost?
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, there you go, Dave. I think you could keep on going.
Okay. So just a kind of a brief summary in regards to where we are today in regards to new business projects that are coming in the door. And so on the green graph there is kind of the number of projects that we've been seeing over the last few years on a monthly basis. And that's kind of, you know, in regards to trying to establish a trend of whether it's up or down, it's pretty, the last few years is pretty much the same, especially the last 2 years here. It's pretty similar. If you go out further, you see there's a few more projects in there. Probably if you wanted to assign any type of trend to this information and number of units that we're seeing and we're processing. So that's the tan graph and the table above that tan graph. If you go out a few years ago, there were definitely bigger projects in regards to the number of units, but if you look at the last 2 years here, it's fairly consistent. And that table above, which kind of summarizes the number of units and or the number of services. In the last 2 years, it hasn't significantly changed in regards to things. So hard to, other than the size of projects, it's hard to assign a trend with the information shown here. And then in regards to active projects, we actually have in-house right now, we have 400 plus active projects. 80 of those plus are in review, 70 are in approved status, 50 are currently in construction. 80 are in the warranty period, so basically after construction is complete to the year warranty. So we have 80 completed in the last year. And there's about 120 projects out there that are generally subdivisions where the project's been completed, but not all the meters have been set yet. So there's still infill going on in regards to those projects. So it's about 2,000 lots out there that still could receive a meter as developer asks for it. Some of the kind of the new business application process improvements we've been doing both internal, external projects, and just want to kind of highlight two of the bigger ones that we've completed for the board here is basically the application portal. We completed this last year, and that was a heavy lift. We had a Levi's group, this BIS group really helped in regards to establishing this portal. And so it seems like the implementation's gone well. It seems like it's been saving time and handling the projects. We can actually move everything through this web page versus paper applications and OneDrive passing back and forth emails. Everything can be done on a web page in regards to moving the project back and forth as we review it. So that's been a great implementation at this point. a document that we produced, and I'd like to definitely give credit to both Tiffany and Katie, our design review engineers at the time, in regards to putting this new business engineering tips and tricks guide out there. We've also had a couple of workshops as part of this guide development. And so basically it's a guideline for how to submit the TMWA, common mistake, common issue, common red line. So it kind of points that out to them. Hopefully they get it through quicker with less revisions is the intent. So it's a great guide, I think, and it's got some decent distribution. And we had a decent showing in regards to the workshops as well. I think we had, between the two workshops, we had like 60 show up one form or another.
Those were on Zoom. Right?
Yes. And so as kind of alluded to a little bit, and just continued process improvement in regards to new business, both internal and external, the application portal, where they went tips and tricks guide. The next one we're kind of pursuing as one of the bigger items is online payments. So we're going to try to get that implemented as well. Other things we offer to the development community as well as lunch and learn presentations, free pre-application meetings, meet with them if they have major issues in regards to red lines or questions or comments. We're more than happy to meet with the development community, walk them through as needed. So I think that's it.
I have a quick question. In terms of the new business application and the tips and tricks that you mentioned, number one, thanks for doing that. I think it's great that you're always looking at continuous process improvement. And it sounds like you had a robust outreach component as well. But is there an opportunity, or maybe you already have, to send this to a lot of the organizations that can distribute it to their members? And maybe you have already done that, but I do think whether it's the construction trades or whether it's those development organizations, whether it's even contractors themselves, I think the more that people are aware of what is an efficiency type of streamlining that you're looking at doing would be helpful. So I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion, but you may have already done that.
I think we did do some of that when we first issued it out there, and continue to do that. And the other thing, we do have this on our website too, the new business page. We have a lot of this supporting documentation and process information available as well, but we can continue to do that and getting out to those organizations.
And then I appreciate that. I don't know about you guys, but when you're familiar with a web page, it's great. But when you're not, sometimes things inadvertently get buried. So I'm just bringing it up from being kind of a push, kind of an idea versus a pull. So I'm coming from that perspective. And then the last question I have in terms of that same category is there a feedback opportunity that you have in the design of it? So, I mean, I know that you probably get, if things aren't working well, usually people are pretty good about giving feedback, but I just am wondering if there's an opportunity to kind of get a pulse read on things, because sometimes people just don't even think about giving feedback. They're just working through what may be perceived as other areas of improvement. And I just am wondering if there's something that's built into it.
Yes, so we do have on the portal itself, we have an area for feedback.
Oh, great.
It's been meant for the portal itself as far as how it's working. And that's where most of the feedback have been, hey, that's great, let me pay online. So we've gotten that feedback.
Oh, good.
There are times we've seen that same feedback button used for other types of feedback. And then generally when things aren't going great, we're hearing about them and working through the issues.
There's always those wonderful opportunities. So any other questions?
I was gonna say, so Danny and Dave are in front of BAN, HEC, often throughout the year, and so I think that's the feedback loop as well, and we can kind of continue to.
But NAIOP is another organization that I would encourage. I don't ever want to lose track of the construction trades either, even though they are further down in the process. I think sometimes it's good. You never know. Sometimes those folks are moving into other opportunities and career changes. So I think the more that everyone has information, the better informed we'll have. So that's where I'm coming from. But thank you for your presentation and thank you for all your hard work. I'll open it up to any other questions. This is just a presentation with no action. Hearing none, we'll again, thank you so much and move on to the item number 10, which is a presentation on TMWA's street and highway water main replacement program. Mr. Deagle and Piper, I hope I'm getting that correct. Thanks. Welcome. Good morning.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Levi Kleiber, Manager, Business Information Systems. I have here with me David Deagle, Engineering Manager, and we're here to provide an update to the Street and Highway Main Replacement Program. Let's see if I've got all the tools necessary to do so. Okay. So to set the stage here for the next few slides, we're going to be looking directly at the GIS data, the distribution system itself, and it's going to change slightly as we work through the next few slides to fit the theme of the slide. So first one here, we have a total length of over 2,000 miles of active water main. And for those who are counting, that's about 2/3 across the United States if we were to plug these in end to end. So that's a pretty big number. 10 inches or less makes up just over 70% of the total system. So moving on to the next one, we have percentage of main by material. Several material types exist within our system. However, the four I have called out, C900, transite or asbestos cement, the ductile iron and cast iron makes up over 90% of the system. And then of course, on the left there, you can kind of see the dark blue, lighter blue, and then some of the ductile iron within the system there. In a few minutes, Dave's going to talk about why material diameter is important components in making our evaluation for replacements, as well as system aging. So you can see the age breakdown by color there. Onto the bottom there, sorry, it's kind of blocked there, but you've got the distribution of length by age in the bar chart. Thank you. 80% of our active water mains are 50 years old or less. So call your attention back to the distribution system. There's a couple of themes that probably jump out at you. And for the city planners in the audience, you kind of have that concentric circle growth where you have a lot of the new infrastructure out the periphery and older, into the core. You can see in the, make out kind of the core of downtown Reno, downtown Sparks. There is some older infrastructure there, but I also point out that a lot of that red and some of the orange is starting to get taken over by new main, which is what we're talking about here today. Let's see, moving on to the next one. Uh-oh, I lost my... Thank you. All right, so there's a lot going on this slide. There's the distribution system on the left, and we have our recorded main leaks or breaks as points overlaid onto that system. One thing that we're really proud of is that we've got real comprehensive leak history data dating back to the early 80s. So again, we're really proud of that. In the chart, we have a length of water main by year, going back good 14 years or so. Moving to the right, total recorded main leaks by year, and then breaks per 100 miles of main per year, which is kind of a metric, a shared benchmark, if you will, to gauge overall system performance. Call your attention down to the note on the bottom, which essentially says, the TMWA says that 15 should be the max for each 100 miles of distribution pipelines there, which is a really high number. Kind of for additional context, a very recent study done by Utah State University. This was just released last year in partnership with the Water Research Foundation, did a North American study and found that the current national average is at 11. So that's 11 main breaks per 100 miles of distribution main. However, they also broke it up into region. Nevada, along with California and Hawaii, falls into region 2, which you can see there is at 6.5 breaks per 100 miles of main. So by any of these metrics, we're doing quite well. However, it's one thing to benchmark ourselves against national or regional averages, but it's also important to really do this evaluation for replacements on our own. So now I'll pass it on over to Dave to do a deeper dive into some of that replacement criteria.
Thank you. As Levi said, I'm David Deagle, engineering manager for the Capital Group. Levi and our group works well together. He collects all the data and he's all the data. So it's a good partnership. The Street and Highways program. This is our program for addressing the distribution systems. You mentioned it earlier. It's one of our biggest assets that TMWA has, right? And there's a lot going on there. So 3 main purposes to the Street and Highways program. 1, taking a proactive approach to opportunities to replace the aging infrastructure. We said 20% of our system is over 50 years old. That's a lot to start trying to tackle. You saw some red in there, and those are the things that we're focused on in the Street and Highways program. It's also an opportunity to protect our existing infrastructure with the partnering agencies, for them to understand their impacts of their road project to our mains and letting them know what's needed to protect the infrastructure. And my favorite is actually it's building a better communication and partnering agency relationships to better serve our community. We know each other by first name, we call each other. If issues arise, we work together to resolve them for the community. Next slide. All right, so when we get a Street and Highways program, we meet monthly. We get a project from RTC, Reno, the different partnering agencies, they bring it to the table. And the first thing we do is look at the section that's being replaced, and we do a go, no-go decision with the distribution group, a number of us, the engineering program, and we go through a justification. The justification that we look at is, this is only a few highlights, there's 20 plus different things we look at, but these are the main ones. The type of street, we look at the future. If you're replacing a residential street, how long is it going to be before it gets replaced again? 40 plus years. So we have to look at the age of the infrastructure, the amount of leaks, the amount of what's going on, and base it on the road. That, when's the next time we're going to be in here and see these opportunities? The street rehab method plays a big role. That plays a role in the type of, how much benefit we get out of the money side of it. We talked about age of main material. What he was highlighting, the cast iron. It's our oldest mains that are in the road. That's what we're actively trying to get rid of. Cast iron is being replaced with ductile. They no longer provide it. And so you'll see quite a bit of projects where we are getting rid of the cast iron. Asbestos has started in the 1940s to the 70s. And then we see some older steel pipe. And we still put steel pipe in today. It's a good material, but it's some of the oldest that are in the ground. We look at number of leaks per mile, but more importantly, in that segment, how many leaks are we having? Sometimes that plays a role. If we have multiple leaks, we have a problem section, we'll pay attention to that and rate it higher. And then obviously the criticality of the main. Because of Levi's group, we have an ability to hit a valve trace and see that section and see how critical, how many customers does it affect? How taking this out, if we were to lose this, what does it do? And as you can imagine, leaks shut customers off. And when we look at a Street and Highways program, we're able to plan and minimize the shutdown to get it replaced. I lost it again. So benefits, I just talked about one of them, plan, coordinated, minimize the customer impacts. When we consolidate with the other partner agencies, it's one impact to the public project. I think more importantly, if we do these projects on our own, the street gets patched up. It looks, I'll get into that later, but you know, when we get in here, we do our pipeline, they get a new pipeline, and then they're coming in with the roadway project, and I think the public appreciates that. It's like, hey, I got a new street, and we just got the main replaced, and we don't have us coming in afterwards, we have to fix leaks. For us, we only have to do asphalt temp patching, and we don't have to pay for the rest of the permanent patch, because it's already included as part of that partner agency's project. And we've talked about this a lot, ductile iron pipe, proven durability and long life. I mean, the more we get this stuff in the ground, the better, because it lasts for a long time. It's robust, so when they do their street and highways project, we know it's protected and they can put their heavy equipment on it and it's not gonna be damaged. And more importantly, again, proactive investment approach, avoiding more costly repairs. We, in the last 10 years, have done 43 miles of main replacements, which is approximately 0.2% of our system per year, and an investment of about 7 million on average.
It should be working.
Sorry.
Okay.
Main replacements outside the street and highways program, they do happen. Leaks are costly, disruptive to both the public and the customer, and offer no real benefit to anybody. In 2015, there was a report done where we prioritized 10 different mains, and it was presented to the board. We are still tackling those as they come, as opportunities arise, or the leaks become to the point where it just makes sense financially that we have to do them instead of having to replace or deal with leak mains. California and Daniel was just completed in 2024. Non-street and highway main replacements outside of those are usually identified by the distribution system. Those guys deal with the system more than anybody else, and they're my best information. They come to me and say, hey, we're having a nuisance area, and we look into it and get it replaced. It's more of a reactive approach, but it happens. And I wanted to highlight that when we do those projects, and it's not under a street and highways partner, we are not only responsible for a temp patch, we have to do a permanent patch, and it typically requires a 2-inch grind and overlay of half the road where the main's at, and we go 10 feet each side of every service. So you imagine when you see your street, it looks a little patched up and not as clean as when you have a street and highways partner. It also, on average, is about 25% increase when we don't do it as part of the street and highways project, just in payment cost.
I don't know why. There, yeah.
So this is the distribution system reliability goals that Ryan Dixon's group tracks and keeps track of. The street and highways program is our solution to trying to tackle this. Build in replacement mains, especially the stuff in red, that 20% mains that we were talking about. It's the only way to stop leaks and try to improve those numbers. And so again, we work closely with them on the planning side and trying to figure out when's the right opportunity to tackle these at the most cost-effective way. And that's that street and highways program. We need to continue to improve our communications with the partnering street and highways agencies. The more they know about what we're trying to achieve, the better. They have been nothing but great partners, and they get new people in, and we have this ongoing communication that we continue to improve. And we always plan and budget around what projects they have coming up and how much they're doing. As many of you know, RTC has quite a bit of work coming. They're in a lot of design phase right now, so we're busy. And kudos to my engineer who couldn't be here today, Paul Brown. He's kind of the lead face of TMWA for the Street and Highways program. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? You did such a thorough job. Now it has one question. Oh,
No,
Mr. Anderson, I
no question.
apologize.
And actually, just want to give a shout out to you guys. When we have issues in Sparks, as we've had a couple of them lately, I just want to say thank you for the response. Talking to our folks at Public Works, they praise you all for your response and how quickly you get on the scene and take care of it. I do have kind of a question. So like we're able to use cameras and such to evaluate storm drains and things like that. Is there any way to do that in water lines like that? Or is that
Not really, because it's pressurized. There's no like real access points. It's kind of a sanitary issue. That's why everything's tight and meant to not be able to leak out or things that come into it. But just like you would with sewer, they camera everything. We're not really able to do that. The only thing we really monitor is the cathodic protection system on the ductile iron. When we have it available, we can see how much corrosion is happening by monitoring that. And that's a program we upkeep, but obviously not all our mains have it. So
Ryan
How
Dixon.
many of those monitors do you have? Just,
Sure. So Ryan Dixon for the record, we're also looking at other emerging technologies. There are leak detection devices that we can put, at the meter, and sounding equipment that we use to try to determine where leaks do exist. We do have some of that. We're always looking at new approaches and, what emerging technologies are out there. But corrosion monitoring is a big part of what we do.
yeah, I guess just one follow-up question in regard to the leaks that we had in Sparks. One of them, I was told that there was a delay of a couple hours because of needing street closures. Have we been working together to resolve that, to be able to speed that process up for you guys? Because if I heard it correctly, it was actually you guys waiting on us to close the street. Is that?
I can have Brent Smith was actually, and Ryan Dixon, Director of Distribution Services for the record. Brent can speak to this. He was actually out there that night. If you're talking about when we had Sparks Boulevard and Rock Boulevard shut down, we have contract traffic control services that we request services from. They were so busy, as we all know, that Sparks event was such a big leak and required so much attention that they were delayed getting to the second one out on Rock. Brent, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we had a couple different issues that night. We had Sparks Boulevard, and we had another crew that was prearranged working on South Virginia that had contracted traffic control. So when Rock happened, we had that crew finish up what they were doing and try to get over to Rock as fast as they could. We weren't waiting on anything from the city of Sparks. We were waiting on our own contractor traffic control to get over there. We use a couple different contractors. They don't have a lot of after hours personnel. But that night, everything was just kind of taken up.
Stretched thin.
Yeah, we weren't waiting on City of Sparta.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was, we were talking about partnerships and all that. I'm like, okay, what dropped there? But great information. Thank you.
The feedback we got from City of Sparks was terrific. Our crews felt like the partnership worked out really well, very accommodating to what our needs was.
Everything worked out really well in the Park Boulevard to get that repair done. That would Brandon Park, Bob out there. You got SNC on board and that intersection replaced in about a day and a half. Yeah. Everything came together just right too, but coordination was great. City's Park.
Brent, would you be so kind to just your first and last name and your position? That's okay.
Brent Smith, manager.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Yeah, so you mentioned California and Daniel replacement. And I wanted to just thank you because I know you guys went an extra mile to get the surface paving redone, where there were cracks and where there was overlaps of some new work. And those are the kind of things that the residents so appreciate. And I was, I had worked with John Zimmerman. I didn't know it was you particularly, but I just wanted to thank you for getting that done. It was huge. The other thing I was going to suggest is over at the San Reno, when we're doing street, bigger street projects, what they do is they usually reach out to the council member for that area and give us a separate briefing before they begin the work. And there's a lot of individual household handholding with those kind of projects because they have to redo driveways sometimes and sidewalks, and that directly might affect people's landscaping and other things like that. But I was going to suggest, and I don't know if you traditionally do this, but that when you are beginning these bigger projects, if you could reach out to whatever jurisdiction it is and kind of give us a heads up so we know, just in case something does happen. I was finding out about that particular project after the fact. I didn't even know you guys were doing the project. Now, maybe I should have, but it would be extra helpful if you, as you're getting to start, to do a reach out to the electeds. We're usually the ones they call, if there's an issue. They don't really know who to call at TMWA or it's usually a third party contractor, right? And they're not going to go interface with that. So that would be really helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment from me. So last month I talked about, arming the board with information. So as you're in the community, you can be ambassadors for us like you always are. And just to make you aware, this is the process we have. It's efficient for multiple areas. So that's the purpose of these presentations. So
Thanks for everybody's hard work.
thank you.
We'll now move to the presentation of TMWA goals and objective results for fiscal year 2025. It's item 11, and Mr. Zimmerman, and the it's all of the hard copy as well.
Thank you, Chair Andriola. So every year we talk about the goal results. We'll go through these, not every one, but please send us if you have any questions on any particular item. We'll go through the ones in yellow and red, and then any significant ones in green that didn't hit. First up, talking about customer satisfaction. It'll be a presentation by Robert Charpentier, just to go over our customer survey, customer satisfaction results, and then we'll dive into the rest of the goals.
Morning, everybody. For the record, Robert Charpentier, Chief Communications Officer. Just quick couple of words on our process. So TMWA, 140,000 accounts, 95,000 available emails. We send out 2 surveys a year. So we break it up into 4 parts, essentially assuring that a customer won't receive an invitation to take the survey once every 2 years. That don't want to bomb people. But the survey result is, survey says, you're right. 86%. So our 4 stars or better of our customers. So we got a really strong customer satisfaction rating this year, up a few points from last year. And for TMWA, this does a couple of things. One, it's a reflection on the work of pretty much everybody in TMWA. So this isn't, though communications uses these surveys to determine what our customers care about and what we should be communicating about. So it informs our communications planning. It really is a reflection on the work that's done by distribution, water quality, essentially everybody in the organization, customer service in particular. So on.
Before you leave this, what does this actually mean? That I'm not knowing how to interpret this chart. Like the 5 stars, 4 stars. What are you trying to tell us?
It's just a pretty straightforward rating. You're rating us from 1 to 5 stars in terms of satisfaction. So
this is overall.
This is overall.
Oh, okay, we're just missing the title, I think.
Yeah, we're kind of losing the thought, but yeah, this is overall satisfaction. And in a couple of slides later, we'll get into what informs, satisfaction.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I see 2 and 1 is 2 stars and 1 star.
This is a
little confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just trying to condense the slide a little bit.
Okay.
As a side point, JD Powers in their assessment of 15 Western region mid-sized water utilities, TMWA ranks 3 out of 15. So again, very strong showing. This is what I talked about a second ago, because so amongst the questions, the purple arrows that you see there indicate, and this is based on a regression analysis, indicate what is informing or what is indicating customer satisfaction. So what they really care about is, water affordability, have confidence in our water quality, and have confidence in our water supply as well managed. So forward. And from 24 to 25, when they were asked to prioritize the things they care the most about, it's been pretty consistent, which is really a reason for the consistency in our communications and why the pillars of our communication plan, which really focus on, water quality, water availability, remain the same. So in this chart just kind of gives you an idea of who is commenting. Among those who gave 5 stars, 25% of those commented in odd down. At the bottom, 1 star, 75% commented, which anybody who's deals with customer service understands a lot of times when people are out of gripe, we're more likely to comment. But I don't know, if you have an opportunity to read through the comments, you'll see that, what comes up is online payment, how much they're paying, water quality, what the process is, like, oh, is it paperless or so on, and then look at online experiences. We have a lot of comments about those things. So again, this is very helpful for us in terms of developing information for our customers so they understand how to get the most out of their transactional relationship with us, if nothing else. So as already stated, we're going to use this information to inform our strategic communications and to form plans around that. The at a glance report, which is mentioned third, is a reflection of, so what does this tell us? It tells us that, why TMWA has always done well in terms of our customer satisfaction. I believe, and this is just my belief, but since I've been here, the model established from day one is we're an open book. We're going to do everything we can to make sure you have the information you need to understand why your bills are what they are, why we're doing the capital projects that we're doing, and so on. So the at a glance report is an extension of the success that was had with the PAFR, because the PAFR basically took the ACFR and turned it into a document that people could read and understand it. And yes, great, I can read this and understand it, but also it tells me that this utility wants me to understand what's going on. So it's just been a very successful approach. So my last slide. I guess that's my last slide. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Well, thank you for the ongoing process of trying to get feedback and make appropriate changes where needed. And I think it's always interesting. It's great to hear the satisfaction, but sometimes listening to the comments and the things that aren't necessarily, I think there's opportunities for folks that have their own suggestions on improvement that might also be looked at. And I'm sure you're looking at all of that as well. So thank you.
Without a doubt, it is a bit of an art and science, and I'd be remiss not to mention Good Standing Outreach and TMWA, who really guides us through, particularly the science part of it. She's done a wonderful job helping us read the tea leaves and guide our efforts. So,
thank you.
Okay, so now we'll jump back into the goal results, and we'll talk about number 2 below, Ryan Dixon, Marcy Wesley.
Morning board, Ryan Dixon, Director of Distribution Services and Customer Service for the record. As Robert did a fine job of saying, we had a good year in customer service, and asked Marcy Wesley, who's the manager of customer service, to come up and provide a little more. So,
Sorry.
I'll go ahead and read it out loud. So, goal number 1.
Getting old for the bird.
Yeah.
Goal number 1 is residential customer service. Our residential customers totally or mostly satisfied. We had an 86% rating, which Robert went over in his previous presentation. And then goal number 2, which we're going to talk about, is meet the Everise contract requirements of calls answered within average of 35 seconds.
So our call center does a great job in, making sure that our calls are not left on hold very long. 19 seconds is what their average has been for the last year. So obviously we met that goal, and I think it's pretty impressive that they could get it to people that quickly.
And that's just for information purposes too. We do a third-party call center under contract, Everise. And then talk a little bit about for this goal and the plans for next year's March. Moving ahead.
I think we're keeping this goal. I think the goal that we're getting rid of is the call answer time, which we'll talk about that further down, I believe.
This is it.
This is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're getting rid of this goal, then
This is a service level, agreement with Everise as well. So we can't really control how, the phones are answered. So if we're getting rid of this goal, it would make sense because it's not something that TMWA controls, our expectations are that they would answer it within 35 seconds. So that goes back to the SLAs and making sure that the service level agreements are met. So that's up to us to make sure that those are enforced. So if we get rid of that goal, that would be the result.
That's right. Yeah, customers don't have any, employees don't have any ability to affect this goal. It's all through contract negotiations, contract with Everise.
And part of these goals too, as I talked about last month, we're going to effective utility management, starting that process. And so our goal for the board will shift more to broad and less in the weeds type of things like this one. But we're still going to be tracking and monitoring it with our third-party contractor.
I would just ask, I think it's good though that we at least have that information. I'm not suggesting that it necessarily be a goal. I'm not opposed to that based on the information, but it's pretty impressive. 19 seconds.
So this information is on the board report every month.
Okay.
I supply that to all board members every month, so you do see that information.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll continue to track it.
Great. Thanks.
The next two goals talk to just efficiency. Again, those are American Water Works Association benchmark standards. We strive to be in the top quartile for both of these. I think in the last 2-3 years, we've been in the median percentile. I think that's, and Danny Rutter can speak to this a little bit too, in his research of other Western water utilities that are part of this survey that goes into the benchmarking, is we're a very complicated system. And we're growing into the regions of our system that are even more complicated. So that adds to a little bit of our efficiency decreases. But again, I think we're an uptick last year in number 2. And so we're kind of holding the line there, but definitely our goal is to get back into that top quartile.
Yeah, Danny Rutter, Assistant General Manager, just commenting on kind of how this benchmark comes about is these utilities all just say, here's the number of employees we have, here's how many accounts we have. You just do it that way. And we've tried to provide that context to everybody as we go along to say, well, if we're comparing ourselves to Tucson, they have 100 wells. We have 90. They have 3 pump stations. We have 120. They have 3 tanks. We have 107 or something like that. And so trying to provide that context and continue to look and say, okay, this is a metric. It is some information to have and compare ourselves, but is it really apples to apples? And is it really making sure we continue to meet the level of service that we want to meet? So we brought in other goals to provide us some of that context, like for instance, the operational goal of preventative maintenance, and trying to track that and quantify that and say, okay, it's better to not show up at Sparks Boulevard on a 2 p.m. on a Friday and close down the road. It's better to do that when it's appropriate. Same thing with having a water outage with a pump station or a pressure regulating station that has too much pressure. So this is something we continually kind of keep a look at and say, okay, it is something we want to strive for to be lean, and we do that across the board, but where's the line that just by trying to be lean, we're dropping all these other balls because of the infrastructure that we have and the complicated nature of our system. So, yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. And again, please stop us if you have any questions about the results as we go through. So next up will be Jessica.
All right, Jessica Atkins for the record. These safety goals, the first 2 I want to mention, they're in green, which is actually really a good thing for us. They are compared against the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that's our TRIR, which is essentially OSHA incidents. And the second one down is the days away of restricted duty. So being in the green is really, really good. And not only are we in the green in these areas, but we're very well in the green, which means that our employees are taking safety very serious. So last year we talked to the board about kind of also looking at not just the benchmark of the Bureau of Labor Statistics for these 2 goals, but also kind of comparing against our own internal performance, just in the context of continuous improvement of our safety program. So we don't present that in writing, but I'm happy to report to the board today that in these 2 areas, we've continued to see a downward trend, meaning that even when we're comparing against our own performance, we're doing better year over year than continuous improvement. So that's really great news. Unfortunately, where we struggled this past year is that 3rd goal, which is where we track our collisions per million miles. We had red, so you can see the rate is 8.9, which is a little bit different than the total number. We had 13 instances that qualified as a collision based on our definitions that we use, 70% of which were TMWA employees hitting stationary objects, which is very much in our control. We implemented walkarounds and a bunch of different safety stuff several years ago when we saw this kind of creep up on us. That did seem to help us out. We're kind of there again. So our safety and risk coordinator, along with our fleet services team and our supervisors, are all working together with our safety committee to do some deeper dive into some analysis of numbers, training, and seeing if any additional administrative or engineering controls could be implemented to really focus on getting this number headed back in the right direction, which is a decline. So.
We have cameras on our vehicles.
We don't have cameras.
Are we thinking about doing that?
I would defer to Ryan.
Ryan Dixon, Distribution Services, and Fleet falls under that. We are continually having conversations about new and emerging technology. Cameras is one of those. We do have cameras on a lot of the vehicles that are outward facing, more so for reverse backing up.
Right.
But do we have cameras inside the cab and forward facing cameras?
Yeah.
We do not at this point in time. It is something that we discuss regularly at the manager level. You know, with contract employees, it is an issue of concern about you know, how we monitor them, and that is a point of discussion continually. But it's something we are actively discussing. We do have GPS on all of our vehicles, and we are talking currently about how we can leverage that to make improvements as well.
Kind of going off of that question, you mentioned contract employees. So you have contract employees driving vehicles, company vehicles also?
Jessica Atkinson, for the record, I believe what Ryan's referring to is the individuals that fall under the collective bargaining agreement and indicating that they're contract employees. We don't have contractors in the sense driving our vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Right, Matt.
Yeah, so this is finance section, so you can see some green at the top. I want to point out number 3, which is rating agencies. So as of today, all 3 rating agencies have held their rating, including Fitch at the top. Fitch is actively undergoing their annual surveillance now, so they will hopefully affirm that rating here in the next couple of weeks of AAA. That's the highest you can get from Fitch, which is a great spot to be, also a little nerve-wracking. But these agencies have also started to take a more negative outlook on the industry as a whole. So we fall into that, and I think we will continue to overcome that. I'm hopeful, and so I just want to point that out. The 2 yellow ones, the number 5 is cash. We've spent a lot on capital, and that's affected our cash balance, and I'll talk more about that in the funding plan presentation later on in the agenda. A lot of that as Dave Deagle and Levi presented, and Kershaw talking about capital and investment in infrastructure, and we've spent over $100 million on what we call our capital over the last 2 years, repair and replace, which is capital spent on existing assets, and so it's critical that we continue to do that. But that does come out of our cash, and we'll talk again more about that later. Number 6 is a reflection of operating costs, and so we're at 1.43 times on debt service coverage. That's compared to our goal of 1.5, so we're close. And actually, slight improvement from last year. Last year we were 1.42, so it's definitely stabilized. A lot of that is inflation. We're still feeling the effects of what happened over the last couple of years with inflation, and I'll talk more about that in the funding plan too. So, any questions on that?
Question. Sure. When you mentioned negative outlook from these rating agencies, what does that mean exactly? Just want
Yeah. So the rating agencies will take a look at different industries across the board, from private to public industries, water utility being one of them. And What I understand is because of some of the issues that water utilities face across the country, from inflationary impacts, aging infrastructure, it's the same stuff we talk about. And then also inability to adjust rates accordingly. Rating agencies will say, as a whole, we view this sector negatively from an investor's perspective. So that can then go into investors' decisions in buying bonds or whatever else might be the case. So they kind of put out these overarching outlooks again for an industry, but then they still go entity by entity and give their ratings. And so even though they're giving more negative outlooks across the industry as a whole, that doesn't mean that they're reflecting the same for TMWA. And in fact, I think if they affirm these ratings, it's kind of a signal that, hey, we're overcoming that as an organization, even though the industry outlook is negative. We have overcome it. Another thing that they pointed out is emergency management stuff, looking at wildfire risk, especially in the West. That's something that they've pointed to. Climate, drought, those kinds of things are also affecting their more negative outlook on the industry. And they're not all the same. They can have different outlooks based on what they value as an agency.
Thanks. Yeah, just one example with the LA fires last year. Spitzer Moody's downgraded LA Department of Water within a week. Yeah, based on that fire risk.
Yep, it was. And yeah, I think I can't remember which one it was, but it was immediate. They immediately downgraded them.
So. And then Matt, the two goals we're removing for next year, number 4 and number 7.
Yeah, so you there's some new goals, and so we'll talk about that, I think, in the next item. But number 4 and number 7, in some ways, to make room for what I think are better goals to look at, more impactful, remove those. Number 4 is low debt ratio, and that's looking at total liabilities and total assets. That's kind of a slow moving goal. We're paying down our debt. We're investing in an organization. So you're kind of looking at capital and you're looking at debt. It moves pretty slowly, and so it doesn't really impact strategic decisions so much. So number 4 came off, and number 7 is looking at total net income as a percent of total assets, and that total net income is influenced in a lot of ways by connection fees, which are sort of outside of, again, what we can control. That's really what's driven by growth in the area. So I also don't think it's a real meaningful goal. So I took both those out.
And we'll talk about that when we talk about the new goals. I just wanted for transparency for the board, knowing what we're doing for next year's goals. So next up is Danny Rotter, Natural Resources.
Yeah, so these are green, so that's good. The one thing I will point out, we put 100% on the APWF for an operating agreement, because we spent the last 2 years really working a lot with Reno's staff on that agreement, a lot of work with legal and how are we going to build a power bill, all kinds of different stuff like that. And so that has been completed, but it's not approved yet at the board and the council. So I'd give us a 95% on that, or a 98% or something. But I just wanted to point that out, that will stay on there because it's part of that whole package, bringing forward the final design, the GMP, all the final contracts, including the operating agreement, which maybe would be like a marriage covenant for the rest of the project.
To treatment.
Will Raymond, Operations and Water Quality. Again, all greens, and we want to keep it that way. We're going to adjust a little bit working with Matt when it comes to goal 1. Really, it's a target based on the production, but I think what we have coming up is a better way to present the delivered cost of water rather than a treated target, which is pretty arbitrary. Number 2 and 3 are probably our biggest hits that we always look for, to make sure we have no MCL violations for our produced water quality, and also have that partnership for safe water goal that we enjoy the President's Award from the Partnership for Safe Water. I think we've recently received our plaque for the can't remember if it's the 5 or 10. It's so hard to have a director's award and a president's award, and as long as we've been in there. So there's based on our water quality produced from Chalk Bluff. And we hold that same standard to Glendale and the Mount Royal treatment plant. And we're happy to report we maintain that outstanding value there. So we're very happy.
And just for the board, so number 2 is a huge goal for us and one that takes a tremendous amount of work, effort, dedication from everybody within TMWA, especially those in Will's group. So just wanted to emphasize that because it can kind of get lost going through these quickly, but that's a huge goal for us.
Thanks for saying that, John, because if you can see at the end of every quarter, those last couple of days of the quarter, it's very difficult sometimes to be around the water quality people because that's their bread and butter. They are scouring line after line of hundreds and hundreds of pages to make sure we've submitted every sample, we've collected everything in that 3-month window. So major kudos to them as they're navigating our compliance submissions and recording data with our regulatory agents.
Thanks, Will. On to Ryan and Brett.
Good morning. This is Ryan Dixon with Distribution Services for the record. I wanted to thank David and Levi for their presentation. I think it shows a lot of what we're doing. On one of their slides, they showed that we've already done 55 main leaks this year. So we are on pace to blow out all the previous records when it comes to water main leaks that we've had recently. Because of that, we've also seen that the leaks are on the rise within our distribution system. We do have another heavy crew that's coming on board so that we can efficiently and effectively address them as they come up. So it's been a very busy year for us, and the graphic up there indicates that. You can see we do have a lot of green, which is good. In the unplanned areas, the number of outages are less than what is typically seen across the country. And I've invited Brent up to help explain some of the yellow that we've seen and how busy our crews have been.
Good morning, once again, Brent Smith, Manager, Distribution Operations. We have goals 3 and 4 that are highlighted in yellow. These represent the number of outages per 1,000 customers performed with a duration of less than 4 hours when prior notification is not provided or documented. But these include main breaks, service breaks, anytime that we don't really have a good opportunity to notify the customer that the water's going on. Could be after hours, just an emergency, the water's going on. Goal number 4 in yellow kind of represents the same thing. It's just the duration of time exceeds 4 hours. So, but as discussed by Levi and Dave Eagle earlier, the replacement of the aging infrastructure, including water mains and service lines funded through the capital improvement plan, the street and highway program, those directly impact the water service reliability for our customers. We're also making improvements to the identification of our aging infrastructure through our asset management program and our work order tracking program system. So, we're also looking at making improvements with the way we notify customers. There are some leaks that, we don't consider an emergency that we may do the next day. So there may be options in the future to reach out to customers ahead of time, whether it's a text or possibly an email. Just lets them know that their water service is going to be affected or could be. But that, if we do that, that would move some of the planning numbers higher than they are now. But I think it's in our best interest for our customers to, be able to plan outages with them on schedule. Cool. Any questions?
Thanks, guys. Next up, back to operation. Will.
Okay, so I'm also leaning into Sean Feeney on this one because he'll talk more nerdese language than I'm hearing and what we're trying to do. Sean, are you covering this one?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Thank you.
Sean Feeney, Director of Technology for the record. This slide kind of represents TMWA's commitment to the continual upgrade and upkeep of our controlled applications that allow us to operate our distribution system. And as you can see, and ideally it's all green, which is always a good thing. It also represents a partnership between my department and Will's department in achieving those green goals. Something to kind of call out on number one, which has been a long-term project. I believe the board members have probably seen this year over year. We're down to under 19 sites left to convert on the original Tumwa distribution system. So there's light at the end of the tunnel we're seeing, and it's not an oncoming train. So that's a very good thing. The rest of them just kind of represent number two is our effort to ensure that the control applications, and we have a variety of them, remain online. So our water operations can, of course, do their jobs. So number three is yours.
Thank you, Sean. Certainly number three is a green. We met the preventive maintenance increase target, but I'd also like to point out we've got some great new things coming up in the future. I want to thank the board for helping position us on our preventive maintenance programs and giving us the staffing we need to make sure our facilities run when we expect them to run. What we also do here in this part, it's an operations preventive maintenance approach, but there is a large, and that's more of a tactical thing. We want to make sure in the middle of summer, everything runs when we expect it. We want to make sure in an emergency, when we've got to pivot, we turn things on and they work. And I think it's a different level of a true preventative maintenance approach in an asset management program. I think Danny alluded to it a little bit, where we're going to formulate and repackage this to migrate more from an operations approach so we can capture more preventative in the future in the planning side and stuff. But the work in hitting these targets, lots of kudos to the maintenance staff to go out there so that pivot at a 1 hour's notice, we're very confident on what's going to run. And we've given it the attention it deserves. So thank you to the board. And we've got a future goal coming up that I hope we will do even better and we'll show.
Next up, customer service.
Morning, Ryan Dixon, Director of Distribution and Customer Service, and Marcel's going to join me up here again. Again, a great year for customer service. Lots of green. We did want to address the one yellow that we had a little bit.
Marky Wesley for the record. We switched our customer information system about 4 years ago, and in doing so, it's a very robust system, and it has kind of lacked our handle time, and we missed it by 4 seconds this year. So that is one of the reasons, is because we just have a different system. It's robust. It takes a little bit longer to navigate. So that is the reason I got.
And I did want to address one of the goals that we wanted to drop for next year, which is number 6, track percentage of total accounts delinquent at fiscal year end. That is just a goal that is completely out of the control of us here at TMWA. It is just based on our customers and whether they are delinquent in their bill or not.
And also, goal number 1, I believe, Ryan, the customer call center average handle time.
Yeah, that was the other one that I alluded to earlier. And,
That's another SLA that we could, is expected of our call center. So that's a service level agreement that is expected. And of course, it is on our board report every month. So you will continue to see that. It's just, there's no reason for us to track it because it's not something that we control.
Over to Sean Beanie, technology.
Yes, thank you. Sean Beanie, Director of Technology for the record. We have a little bit of mix in here, obviously. Several of the goals up there that are green represent our commitment to customer service internally. You wouldn't think that of a bunch of computer nerds, but we do strive to meet the internal needs of our organization. Those goals represent that, both in kind of our turnaround time within our GS department, our IT department, and also building out tools that are needed by the organization. kind of reflected in 1 through 3 and 4 as well. The one call out, of course, is the red here. Obviously, on a presentation like this, red is not our favorite color. But in this case, I would say it's actually a good thing. It presents a strategic opportunity that our organization is pursuing. We have a aging HCM, human capital management application. There's a sunset date on that of 2027. So we have to move shifting out of that application along. That goal was originally meant for that, but in partnering with a business financial advisory firm to kind of help us through the selection process, it revealed that our own financial system was, one might say, not optimized well for how we use it on a day-to-day basis. The investment required to make those changes to bring it in line to something that would benefit the organization both be a significant time and cost investment. And so it came kind of weighing on the scales of, well, do we spend time there and the investment there to kind of rehab the financial system, or do we look at replacing it and going with a full enterprise resource platform, which combines both HCM and finance? And so that's kind of that opportunity that I speak of, that when factoring that, the organization decided to make that strategic shift and focus on selecting a new ERP platform to bring both those applications, which today are disparate and cause some challenges in data exchange, bringing them under one umbrella to kind of make that easy for all the departments involved that use it. So that's kind of the shift, and we'll see that reflected in FY26 goals. For the last goal there, number 6, our technology services is always looking for opportunities for improving our cybersecurity posture. We've seen, obviously, in the news when there's cracks in the defensive walls and people get through, it can be a very, very bad day. So this project is kind of support of that. It's a massive project in terms of technology. We're reshaping fundamentally how our network works, ensuring kind of that all the data flows are monitored internally, externally within our corporate business network. So it's a long road. We've made significant strides, obviously not all the way to 100%, but it's one of those sensitive projects that you don't want to rush. If we rushed it could represent significant disruption internally for the various departments on kind of the business use of applications. So we want to take our time with that and kind of pace it, but we have made significant strides. We are now kind of at a point where we're looking at the restructure of our core business network, which is the most challenging piece of it, but that's kind of the last little bit that's left. So should see significant movement on that too for this year, and that again is a recurring goal for 26.
Madam Chair. Sure. Just had a question. Do you guys perform like breach scenarios if someone does get in or something happens, that how you can isolate it and protect other?
We look at kind of our own internal, I wouldn't call it full tabletop exercise, but kind of round table on just scenarios of what would happen in specific cases as it applies to maybe an application or a certain area of the network. We have participated in larger regional wide exercises that do go over like a specific cybersecurity scenario, which is kind of more real world in a sense, where we're participating with the agency CISA and along with other entities in our area to simulate what would really happen in case of an attacker getting through. So we devise our own unique scenarios in those cases, play them out internally, and also involve various departments in the larger exercises too, so we get kind of true real world feel, observe what improvements need to be made, and then kind of take that and build upon them to increase our cybersecurity posture.
Thank you.
Back to Jessica.
Jessica Atkinson for the record. Not going to spend too much time here, but just one thing to note is the third goal there is tracking the number of FTEs eligible for retirement. This kind of ebb and flows. This year, the total number of individuals is up a little bit higher than last year. So if all of those individuals were to take the opportunity to retire, definitely impact our number 2 goal in future years, which is the tracking the number of departures. But all green is good. We just kind of watch those because if those waves were to come true, it definitely creates downhill impacts. And as you guys know, we plan through that with our succession planning and our training and development initiatives.
Financial?
All right, I'll talk about number 3 and 4. Number 3 is lean operating ratio. This talks to really operating expenses. So I talked about inflation before, that's impacted us. That percentage is below the median, that's why it's red. Last year, it was 69%, so roughly the same, stabilized, I guess you could say. I'll talk more about that during the planning plan. It's inflation, but it's also other things, PERS costs, and we've added to staff in the last few years. So our operating expenses have increased, and that's what is reflected there. Number 4 is a measure of debt, total outstanding debt. So it's something that we talk about a lot, we look at, but as far as a goal, what we try to do is improve every year, and we do. As we continue to pay down our debt, that number does improve year over year. So it's yellow because we're still outside of the benchmark, but we do see improvement there each year.
And then Mac, you touched on just some of these goals that we're not carrying forward.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same story. Made room for some newer goals that I think are more meaningful, but the lean operating ratio, we're taking that goal out. There's a lot of other measures that we'll look at that reflect a similar thing. Number 4, taking out the debt per capita, because it's kind of a slow moving goal and we continue to pay down debt. So it's not really driving any strategic decisions. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around. Number 1 is going to be replaced. This is capital spend, and that goal says we need to underspend CIP, which we always do. There's going to be a new goal where we're talking about actually getting a target spend, which is more meaningful. I think those are the ones we're taking out.
Yeah, those are the main. And I think in total, when you look at these goals, come with managed goals throughout is having 2 sets for each department. And so part of that effective utility management transition to that, we're trying to put all the goals under one department, because I know it's a little bit confusing to jump back and forth between different departments. The next one's natural resources. Danny?
Yeah, these are all green. Yeah, I didn't have to be honest. Most of them were keeping.
And I think the only update on number 2, that should say the interim 2026 legislative session, that was a carryover from 2025. So, but it's just tracking the legislative session. And then engineering new business.
That's 2025, that's the current. So the 26.
Yeah, we got it. Engineering new business. Yep.
So that really doesn't look good on the screen, so I have to point you to the staff report. But the couple things to point out. Number 1 has always been our goal to get satisfaction with our street and highways partners, and so we send out a survey every year, and so that is David and his team. We got a 4.25 rating this year, so that's good. If you have a chance, whenever you see your staff related to street and highways, if they'll fill out that survey, I appreciate it. We send out like 20 and we get like 3 back. But to us, that means like, hey, no news is good news. Otherwise, we'd be hearing about it, you'd be here. So it's not super important, but it would be good to get the feedback. The other one, goal number 2, we've always had this goal where it's kind of deliver required in-service dates or major capital projects. And we end up picking 3 or 4, we put a budget for the fiscal year, and we say, okay, meet or spend that. And so we have some high profile ones here, APWF, Nordic Pump Station and Hydro Service, some tank rehab, the Sparks 36-inch main. And that is in good indicative to give you kind of some snapshots, but that's 4 projects. We have currently probably over 100, 120 projects going on at any given time. So in the future, that will go towards the goal that Matt and I were talking about as an organizational wide goal to hit a target spend so that we're planning and executing consistently. And so that's one that'll move on. But I will point out on APWF that the GMP1 has pushed out into the second quarter of 2026. And that's just due to trying to get all of our costs efficient and trying to go through the best plan process so we get the best subcontractor bids, best equipment bids, so we're not, we don't have a lot of clarifications or change orders and stuff like that. So kind of slowing down a little bit to get it right so that when we hit construction, we're smooth there. The other thing related to that, the 90% cost estimate of the project went up about 10%. So it went from about a little over 250 to about 278, I believe. So we're doing everything we possibly can to try and keep that number the same, which has taken a little bit longer to look under I just saw an email this morning about $100,000 savings in landscaping. Should we do it or should we not? So want to just reassure you, we're looking under every rock to make sure that thing is as efficient as it can. And then Dave, do you want to talk about new business? We've got a couple different turnaround times there. Yeah, 5 out of 6 are green, 1 is yellow.
David Kershaw, new business engineering manager. And so basically our turnaround times are trying to make sure we get everything, an application in regards to new business, get the red lines, the first set of revisions, the red lines out the door within 30 is our first turnaround that we aim for 75%, and then at a minimum, get it out for 60 days. Every project. So we had one hiccup here in regards to it, and it turned out that particular project was a single project that didn't allow us to meet that goal because there was an annexation process. So we took in the application and annexation at the same time. The annexation took too long and delayed the actual application of a water project. But otherwise, we've been doing a really good job as far as getting almost everything out within that 30-day period, or the red lines back out. Start that process. So, any questions on that?
All right, and then the last one there that's red was a bit of a stretch goal. It was trying to complete a gap analysis across all asset management plans and identify 3 high-level improvements. And so the challenge with this one is that somewhat it's good is the enemy of great. We are managing our assets. You heard the street and highways program. You heard the preventive maintenance program. Anybody you talk to is working on tank rehab or booster pump station rehab. And so trying to say, okay, we're doing this thing pretty good, but let's take it to the next level. And so we just didn't get to the point to do that gap analysis. And so it's going to roll over to next year. But it's something that to try and make sure, okay, we are doing good now, but let's make sure we're going to do this good for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And wherever we can level up and do better, let's do that. So, yep. Go on. That's it. That's it. Okay.
Any overall questions about the goal results?
No overall questions. I just want to say thank you all for spending the time and energy to put this all together and work on these. And yes, it's lovely to see all green, but then again, I think sometimes if it's all green, you've got a question, kind of like what you all are doing, going, is this really a good measurement or something that we really, it's valuable to track and pay attention to. So pushing yourself, and although, the reds are not always a happy thing, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being willing to push yourself and the departments to do better at what you're doing. And I mean, I know we talked, I think it was a couple of years ago about dropping or changing the vehicle accident one. I appreciate you keeping it in there. Yes, it's red, but it's like, I believe it's something we should be paying attention to. How can we be making a difference here? And especially, I think you pointed out that a lot of them are basically stationary options. It's like, okay, that didn't move in front of me, it was there. But anyway, I just want to say overall, thank you guys. I think this is awesome, and it just makes me even more proud of being a part of this organization, because you all are stretching yourself and including your team to do the best they can at the job. So well done. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of kudos goes to Ms. Folsom for putting this all together and capturing the results. Well done.
Thanks. And I'll just echo that I really appreciated it. During the presentation, I was, just thinking about what the general manager already stated, and that is consolidating these. So I'm like, didn't we, and so I'm really appreciative of you sharing with everyone that although nothing's changed in terms of the standard and the culture of continuous process improvement, but just the presentation of having the goals and objectives for each department on one slide or one page or however it's presented, I think is really helpful. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Anything else? So a decision time. It's 10 to noon. And if we go by the suggested timelines that are for the remainder of the meeting, it's at about 1:30. So I'm just thinking out loud that we should, if anyone wants to power through that, or do you want to take a 15-minute break? And if we do want to take a 15, I see nods of yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to say at how about at 12:15 we'll reconvene, but for right now we'll call for a recess and grab lunch, and we can then reconvene at 12:15.
Recording stopped.
I'm gonna call this meeting order at 12:17. So we are now on item 12, which is discussion and action and possible direction to staff on the proposed TMWA goals and objectives for fiscal year 2026. Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you, Chair. So with these goals, I'll just go over the new ones as we go through them. So the first section will be Mr. Bowman.
All right. Okay, so I talked in the last one about identifying some new measures that I thought were more meaningful, a little more specific, and even sort of more measurable. But these are what I came up with. So the first is maintain unrestricted cash balance above required minimum, which is part of resolution. It's resolution 266. I talk about that all the time, and so I thought we should probably look at it as part of our annual goal review. And so that's what that goal is. Number 7 is revenue sufficiency improvement, so also known as funding gap. I'll talk about that. You'll hear that in the next presentation with funding plan. That's another one that we talk about, and it's important, I believe, to look at because it really measures sustainability of our organization financially, looking at what's going on with rate revenue coming in and then rate expenses going out through operating costs and capital and debt service. Number 8, this is the one that Will touched on. This is replacing our treatment goal, which was a measure of expenses per gallon produced. This is looking at overall operating expenses as an organization compared to gallons produced. So this will be, I think, a good measure based on our just productivity as an organization. Number 9, this is capital. This is R&R, repair and replacement capital. That's rate funded capital. That's existing infrastructure that we're replacing or doing major repair, rehab on. And the goal here is to hit depreciation expense. And so that's kind of a best practice. If we're depreciating our assets at some manner over a course of time, depreciation based on the estimated useful life of that asset. A good practice is to be replacing that depreciation expense with investment in those assets. So this basically is measuring that. Then the last one is also capital related. This is to execute 75% of forecasted capital improvement plans. So we've been between 65-75% historically. Hitting this number means that we're planning sort of more specifically, more accurately, and then also executable projects. Daniel had some of that.
Yeah, real quick, DDR record. This is also one step towards the EUM framework because that's not a finance goal, that's an everybody goal. It's coming down to controlling costs, to forecasting our budgets, to managing projects, to communicating scope of projects. So just wanted to point that out, that there's a whole lot more to that goal than just what it looks like.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say just real quick on this is the benchmarks and what we're trying to achieve is not, these aren't gimmies. And so I think if I roll forward next year, you might see some yellow on here because these are goals that are meaningful. So they're not just all going to green out expense.
Thanks, Matt. Danny with Natural Resources.
Yeah, so these last couple we've added on as far as our role in the region, basically. And so you can see the first one there is regarding regional planning, EDOM, GOED, water users, and our participation in those discussions, which have happened at numerous different levels. And then the last one is the WRWC regional wastewater utility regionalization study, and being a part of that, providing input, listening in, seeing how we can support, seeing where that goes.
Madam Chair, yes. I really appreciate goal number 6, and I think that that's like getting to what community members are really demanding from elected officials for data centers, but I think we're looking at other large water users. And what I'm wondering, should we get a bit more specific about when you'll be coming to us with recommendations on those type of things? Because there's specific recommendations that we're hearing from community members that they'd like to see TMWA undertake on those type of users.
Part of it is just getting input from the local governments on someone's role in it. Well, always, our mission is to provide water now and into the future. That's new development. And so with data centers or any other entity, where we have some role in pushing back and talking with EDON and TMWA, there's about that efficiency and pushing that. There's nothing within Cumberland that says, draw the line at data centers or it's similar to turf removal. Talked about the moving turf. From TMWA's perspective, since inception, it's always been looking at the local governments to decide that, to control where growth occurs, how much growth occurs, the type of growth. And so I think we would want input from this board on what other role you would want TMWA looking at. Right now, we'll just be working with all the local governments, some of those entities listed, giving our input on water efficiency and water use, and we've done research on data centers and projects. And if there was a large water user, right now we have a rule that says if it's over 100 acre feet for a single project, that would come to the general manager. In some of those cases, I see that I would bring that to this board for review and input. I guess bottom line, we need input from the TMWA board on what role you want us playing, other than advising, monitoring, updating the board on entities coming into this region.
Well, I think there's just a concern from community members that we're using Truckee River water or high water users that potentially could hook up into an effluent. What that looks like realistically, I know that it can't be done across the community because I'm just trying to get effluent pipes to the west into my district from Clayton Valley. So I understand that there's still infrastructure to be built, but I'm wondering I certainly appreciate the goal. I'm just wondering, how will it come together? When will it come together? We're just getting, just to communicate to you what we're getting from community members is that they want to see us take on these issues and take them seriously. And so that would be helpful for me. So I could say, yeah, TMWA made it a goal today in our strategic planning session to look at these, and then we're going to bring it to the board. Well, I have no idea, but just that would be helpful. So I can show that we are looking at these things and seeing realistically what our role is.
Maybe what we can do is just bring back an agenda item talking about how we interact with these entities, how we advise them on water use and what we see coming in, just to give kind of a foundation. Great. The board can give input on kind of next steps. Does that make sense?
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I too am extremely pleased. I know I've been talking to you, John, for over a year about this, and this really started from you, not me. I mean, you said we're wondering about our role.
Yeah.
Do we just, if they ask and it's there, we give, or do we provide any value judgment or policy direction? And it's a different kind of role, but the point I made with John, and I'll make it this board, is that years ago we lost Washoe County Water Resources department at Washoe County, and they were more in that policy role because they weren't TMWA and they didn't give water. They provided advice, they managed the water rights for Washoe County and so on. But I really feel like since they went away, there's a dearth here. There is no policy kind of perspective.
Right.
And I agree with Ms. Hill that, I mean, this is pretty, I'm glad to see it, but I do think it is pretty vaguely worded. And I really do think we need some concrete steps so you can get some direction from the board. Because you've been doing your job one way for so long, right? And this would be a change, in my opinion. And I don't really think it should land in the lap of the director, because that's wow, that's a big responsibility to be able to say yes or no, you get this water.
Sure.
And we haven't really authorized you to have that role. And we are going to have to make some policy decisions. I mean, at some point we're going to reconvene on data centers.
Yeah.
But even taking it away from data centers, we have things like bottling plants, and we have other high water use uses that come along, and we really need to know, does that make sense for our region? And it's the same kind of thing that Southern Nevada Water Authority has taken on, is more of policy discussions about how they want to handle their water shortages and stuff. And I think we're sort of both, right? We're the water provider, but we're also, there's nobody else. There's no Southern Nevada Water Authority kind of group looking at policy. And so we probably have to take this on. And so I'm glad to see it. And I hope sooner rather than later, you do bring it back to us. And I'm sure it won't be the first, but the beginning of a variety of conversations.
Right.
Because any kind of change like that in your mission or the day-to-day, it takes some thought and understanding of how it rolls out, because you need to feel comfortable in this new role, because it is a new role. We haven't said, tell us whether this makes sense. It's just, is the water there? Okay, as long as you got the right pipelines and the right infrastructure, then you get to have it, you know?
No, and I think we can also talk just regional context too, because if, let's say, you ban a certain entity from coming into the Truckee Meadows region, what if they go to Trigan?
Right.
There's still a drain on the system. They might use Truckee River water. That's the reason, John Enlow, got us into the return flow management agreement so we can manage those resources as efficiently as possible. So we could kind of provide an overall first step, just an overall background of the circumstances.
We had at least one Story County Commissioner, and Diane was there with me and Alexis at the data center discussion. And we had one Story County Commissioner, he's really interested in writing policies too. And we did do the 4,000 acre feet line, which is amazing that we did it. And, it took a lot, it took years, a couple of years for us to all figure out the science of it, right? And the return flow component to the river and what could go to to Story County. So anyway, I think the sooner we begin the conversation, the more we can get a handle on this before it becomes outrageous, or something that we didn't want.
Yep. No, and I'd asked David Broder, even John Enlow, if you have additional comments on this to chime in now. If not, we can go forward with that as an agenda item as soon as we put it together.
I was just thinking to Member Hill's comment of trying to be more specific, and that's why I kind of paused. But I think the very next step in front of us, another board item to start to unpack all that and lay the groundwork out would be the best.
Well, maybe you can put a measurement up there. Did you actually bring it to the board? Did we actually make a decision? No. In this next 1 year? Seems like a lot of time to be able to do that.
No, that's plenty of time. And it says as appropriate. And so I think we'll look next year and the board can kind of judge on, did we keep you informed enough and bring it back as timely as you want to.
Everybody good? So I was just going to add before everyone started chiming in too, so I'm not going to reiterate what was already said, but in the spirit of this, I too think it's that balance, because if you're too narrow in a policy, you may be changing that policy a lot. So although there might be one particular situation right now that's at the tip of everyone's tongue, there could be other things. So I think the fact that there already is, to your point, I don't know if it's a policy or not, but if it's at a certain threshold, then that goes to your review, for your review, and then bringing it to the board. So maybe we look at it at a broader way too. So that's all I was going to add. So
that would be our intent.
Anything else? Thanks. Anything else, John? Looks like we have another one under another department here.
Yep.
Under operations.
So this new goal is something that we already do, but we're kind of taking this approach so we can do some enhanced communication and planning when we've got multiple projects that'll affect different areas of our distribution system. So this really puts us on to make sure we're taking a more global reach across TMWA in the multiple different disciplines, so that we don't have concurrent rehab projects that are going to strand some areas of our system. So this is just a measure for us to put ourselves on the hook to make sure we're doing the proper dissemination of projects, and so we can plan for any unintended outcomes. As much as we have best laid plans, we still have to put all our options on the table and contingencies. If this one goes awry, we still have to fly the plane. That's what this goal is intended.
The next thing is technology.
Yeah, thank you, Vinnie, Director of Technology. The first is just a move, a realignment of one of the goals out of operations to technology services. That underlying operational system infrastructure is primarily maintained and supported by a technology services business unit. So it made more sense to align it under technology services going forward. That's that move. Some of the added new goals. The first one is in relation to our geographic information system. It's a vendor push to realign our systems to what they call a utility network structure. That's specifically realigning or restructuring the underlying GIS data in those systems to this new model that's specifically built for or has been designed by larger industry vendors to support utilities in that respect. So we wanted to list it here because GIS is one of those fundamental applications that almost every single department in TMWA touches. So it was of significance enough to kind of highlight it to the board. The next new goal we have is kind of coming back to that where I spoke before on our enterprise resource planning application or platform, and beginning our journey on the selection of that. And so the first step is, of course, to make that selection of the actual platform we intend to use. So that is kind of highlighting that goal or on the horizon. And last one that we have is what Dave Kershaw had mentioned, that developers are clamoring for, having online payment in our public projects portal. So that is that particular goal.
Last but not least, we've already touched on a bit, just the water facility plan, so I'll bring that back in October.
Yep, just our order.
Yep. So those are the goals. I think good instruction on the one goal from natural resources to bring back an agenda. Regional water use. But with that, we take any suggestions on other goals, changes, or adoption of them.
I'm just gonna make a comment. I really like that they're always SMART goals and they're measurable. And I also really appreciate the fact of always adjusting based on helping to be related to decision making. And as Member Anderson said, it's great to have green, but reds are also important to balance as well. So I appreciate the goals and the discussion. But if there's not any other comments or questions, this is an actionable item. So I'll entertain a motion. Does someone have a question?
John Enlow, did you want to provide?
Okay. Mr. Enlow. Bring it back. It took you a few minutes.
Sorry.
That's
I was sitting
okay.
there not wanting to say anything, but then this little guy just came nuts.
Oh, okay. Hey, here we go.
Yeah, I haven't, yeah. John and Logan. No, I really appreciate that discussion. Data centers and water policy and TMWA, what's TMWA's role in that. And one of the things, and we've had this discussion because we talked a little bit about wastewater regionalization. And what my input has been to that process so far, and I don't think a lot of people really understand it, but I would say effluent management and how it's managed has the potential to be the largest by far impact on this community's water rights going forward. And so data centers are one thing, but if they're using effluent for cooling water for that, we still have to provide fresh water in the river to satisfy that downstream use. So, I mean, it's not just a data center, it's not just bottled water, but that effluent management piece is a huge piece, and that has the potential to be the most impactful to TMWA, depending on how it's done. And that's the whole reason we got into the region, effluent management agreement and so forth. That was the entire reason that TMWA got involved in that, is to try to be as efficient as we could be with our water resources. So with everything that's going on with the regional wastewater studies and so forth, it's all related, but it has the potential to be significantly impactful to the drinking water side of the equation, depending on how it's done.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that I know for sure. I just want to be able to discuss it and make sure that, you know, we have these transparent discussions for the community so they have an understanding, and that you're right, it is all these things are connected to certainly. And they're going to be hard to, I think, decisions for the region to make for it. That is the reality.
Yeah.
Can't wait for you to be part of the presentation.
Yeah, no kidding. We're gonna have to think of those really hard questions to ask Mr. Enlow. Start thinking now. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Enlow.
Thank you.
All right, this is an actionable item, so I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve with the discussion included.
Great.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move now to item 13, which is discussion and action and possible direction to staff regarding the FY 2026 to 2030 funding plan. Mr. Bowman and Mr. Rotter.
Right, give Sonia to get this up on the screen.
I'll talk slower, Sonia.
How's it pretty good?
I think you should be ready.
Okay, that's all right, it's working. Okay, so this is every year at this meeting, we go over our 5-year funding plan. Thinking back to what Danny was talking about, TMWA's consistent planning efforts, this is part of that. Every year we look at a 5-year financial forecast. And what it does is it informs what we need to do on the revenue collection side. And what the lever we have there is rates. And so we talk about rates as part of this process, and we'll talk about rates today. But then also in this process is, what are we spending money on? Are we doing it efficiently, wisely? Is it the best use of the money? So we'll get into it. I show this slide often. This is our fiscal planning timeline. So in the spring, March, April, May, we're working on our annual operating budget and 5-year CIP. That comes in front of the board. And then in October, we do the funding plan. And so just to remind the board, really on the table for today is a 3.5% planned rate increase in May of 2026. That's part of what was approved as a rate plan previously. And that is included in this funding plan. And then we'll talk about future rate needs as well. At the last board meeting, we talked about our cost of service and rate design studies, which are ongoing. As part of that, the funding plan informs those, but I wanted to be clear that today we are talking about this on the left side, this bucket out of the 3, and we're not talking about cost of service or rate designs. That's different. So the funding plan determined how much you need to bring in. Cost of service rate design tells you how do you allocate those costs. So I want to be really clear about that today. You'll hear back with cost of service and rate design at future meetings. When we're doing the funding plan, one of the things we look at, and I talked about a lot, are different measures, and I'm going to call it KPIs, key performance indicators. And one of the ones we look at and always talk about is debt service coverage. So the formula's there. It's revenue minus expenses divided by debt service. Debt service is cash going out the door for principal and interest on TMWA's debt. And that gives us a ratio. We have 2 measurements we look at. The first is senior lien debt service coverage as required by our bond covenants, which is 1.25 times. And then the second is all-in debt service coverage, which is our goal. We just talked about this one, and that's 1.5 times. That's what we try to hit every year. That's a measure of our revenue covering certain things. And rating agencies care about this one a lot. I want to mention on the all-in debt service coverage, that board goal of 1.5 times, it used to be based on only senior lien debt, but we moved it a couple of years ago to all in to be a little more conservative. We felt like that was more appropriate. The all in includes SRF debt service as well, which we have a little bit. Most of our debt is senior lien, but we do have SRF, and so we felt like, and we were advised by our financial advisors to include that. So it's a more conservative measure, looking at all in. Second KPI we'll talk about is minimum cash balance. Having cash is important. Cash gives us a lot of flexibility, not to mention investment returns on the cash that we have. There's two measures there. There's restricted cash, which is bond covenants, legal restrictions, and then unrestricted. And unrestricted it's a formula that we calculate every year. It's based on operating and maintenance expenses, debt service, CapEx, and then unforeseen events. And so it's part of Resolution 266. And we have a target that we try to hit. And this is when I added to the goals so that we're gonna, we just want to be very familiar with what that is and what we look at every year. And the last one is revenue sufficiency or funding gap. And the calculation here is revenue minus expenses minus your R&R capital minus debt service, and then what you're left with. If it's a positive number, you have sufficient revenue. If it's negative, you have a funding gap. And you'll see we have a funding gap, and we have had a funding gap for a while. We've been able to get by on cash, but we'll talk about this more. It's important to measure, to look at, which is also why we've added it to the goals. So we're going to go through the same ones, but now we're going to look at what the results are of the funding plan. So as part of the funding plan, before I get into it, we take our annual operating budget, which is very detailed. All the departments participate. We look at headcount. We look at what do we need to do for services and supplies. We look at capital spend. We develop a big capital improvement plan. And then from there, we take that and then we inform the next 5 years. And so we do that with headcount. We look at specific headcount additions. We don't just say we think we're going to need to increase headcount by X%. We look at specific departmental headcount additions over the course of the next 5 years and get input from staff on that. We do the same thing with services and supplies. And the results of this, if we roll it up, looking first at the first measure, you can see senior lien debt service coverage 1.58 times. No problem there. We hit that goal easy. But then you look at all in, the lowest tier there, fiscal 28 in this we're looking at a 5-year plan. That's the lowest year, it's 1.34 times. So that's well below, I would say, the 1.5 goal. Minimum cash. This is more concerning in my opinion. And you look at it again, restricted, no problem, but unrestricted. Lowest level here in the 5 years, again, with the sort of the plan as if we were to take it, is $35.5 million below that minimum requirement. That's not negative cash. So I want to be clear, there's still cash in the bank, but it's below our target by 35.5. Now revenue sufficiency, also concerning, 23.6 million at the end of the plan. So there's a little bit of an improvement, but well below where I think it needs to be. Again, this is kind of the base if we didn't do anything. What we did is, as management, we said, okay, this is the plan, and this plan isn't working. And so we looked at where we could save. What can we do to improve these numbers, but yet not sacrifice what we're doing as TMWA? And actually, what I want to touch on too, I don't know if this is important, but how did we get there? This is a slide I put together that kind of shows inflation. Talk about inflation. It's not all inflation, but a lot of it is inflation. So this chart shows CPIU on the top line since 2018. So I'm sure in all your agencies you're talking about inflation, this kind of lays it out each year. And you can see over the course of those years, it's 28% increase on CPIU. The second line is CCI, that's construction cost index. And so you can see that percentage is 35%, almost 36. That's significantly higher than CPIU. And both of them affect TMWA. Obviously on our capital side, it's more the CCI. And then our rate increases is the blue line, the third line. So you can see we raised rates 19% over the same time when those inflation numbers have obviously outpaced that. So a little bit, we're running behind the 8 ball there. And like I said, that's not the whole story. There is, we have added staff, we've expanded operations. this just shows it in a line graph, so you can kind of see it visually. Again, the top line is construction cost index, capital, which had a big jump and then sort of a leveling off. CPIU, kind of a more consistent increase, and then our rate increases lagging both of those. I wanted to put numbers to this to kind of make it sink in, and also for myself to figure out, well, what does this really mean? And just the inflation, if you look at what we spent on O&M and capital in 2018, that number is about $88 million. And if you took that and inflated it at the inflationary rates, you would be at $28 million more. So you spend the same things, but just inflation adds about 28 million. If we do the same thing with our rates, we only get 17 million. So there's a gap there of 11 million. That's just the inflation. There is more going on, like I said, but that's just the inflation. Okay, so we did that, and then we said that plan isn't going to work. We need to look at something. So we reduced some spend, and what that resulted in. There we go. For debt service coverage, first it improved. Look at that second number in red. The lowest in the plan is now 1.45 times. So improvement, and I feel comfortable with that, even though it's below the target, because there's a trajectory that's much better. Minimum cash balance, just 23.7 million. So again, an improvement from 35. And then revenue sufficiency improvement, still about a $17 million funding gap at the end of the plan. And what we did to get there was headcount was the biggest thing we looked at. We looked at services and supplies, and there's really not much to squeeze out of there. We got a little bit, but not a lot. But with headcount, we had total staffing of 328 in the original plan by fiscal 2030. And remember, these are specific positions that have been identified by departments as needed, in a lot of cases to add value, and in some cases to just continue to provide a level of service. And so we looked at these and said, which of these can we get away with not adding? And it's kind of those value adds. There's always, as we went through our goals, and it was occurring to me that there's a lot of initiatives that we like to do. And those initiatives are really good, but sometimes in cases like this, where we have to put together a plan that is cost controlled, we have to look at some of those initiatives and say, we're not going to do that, or we're going to find a different way to do that without adding to our costs. And so we reduced that number from 328 to 311 staff. So we reduced it by 17 over the course of the 5 years. That got us here. We talked a lot about capital in this plan here. And ultimately, we said it does not make sense to reduce our capital spend. As we've heard today, it's an investment in our assets, and reducing on the capital side, we would pay for that later. It's a lever that is, I want to say, easy to pull, because you could say, yeah, just don't go do that project, right? And then you've saved, a couple $1 million here and there, but you're going to pay for it later. So we did not reduce capital at all, and I want to make sure everybody understands that. So we took those two plans and we said those metrics need to be better. And so this shows what we're proposing in the funding plan. The top line is what is the base plan in the funding plan. So you can see in 2026, it's 3.5%. That was part of a previous rate plan. And then it goes to inflation after that. So 2% each year going forward. The funding plan, which we're proposing here, is again still 3.5%. So we're not asking for any change there, but we are asking for a 5%, 4%, 4% in the plan. The board is not approving those rate increases today. You'll see it in the motion. It's a matter of approving the funding plan, and then those rate increases would come back to the board in the same or potentially different in a year from now for actual approval, and then public process, and then implementation. So right now they're included in the funding plan because we felt it was appropriate to show a funding plan that met certain objectives. And so they're in the funding plan, but we're not asking the board to approve those rates today, but rather approve the plan. And so it's the bottom line there is the difference from the base. So it would have been 2% CPI. It could have been 2.5 in 27, 28, 29. We went with 2. We apply that same number on the operating expense side too. So you kind of, if it goes up there, it goes up over there too. So it's not impactful, but it's a 3%, 2%, 2% difference. And so what does that do? So this is what it does to the funding plan. So you'll see 1.48, so we're close, we're still not there on 1.5 times. To get to 1.5 times, we'd have to adjust rates this year, and we don't think we need to do that. We don't want to do that because we went to the public years ago with this plan of 3.5% coming in fiscal 26, and we don't think we need to adjust that. We also have cost of service coming too, and we think it could get confusing to the public if we gave them two different changes. Minimum cash, you can see unrestricted, the lowest here is 15, but you can see a recovery where this puts us $17 million over our minimum in the last year of the plan. So that's a good spot to be. And then revenue sufficiency. We're still below kind of that equilibrium in the last year of the plan, even with this increase. Now the trajectory is good. There's a good recovery, and I'm totally comfortable with that. But you can see it's not in excess. We still have a bit of a funding gap at the end of the plan. And we've had a funding gap and projected a funding gap for years now. But that's sort of the trajectory of that has led to kind of decreasing cash, and we really need to adjust that. So that's what we're looking at here with the rates. This summarizes what we looked at there. So the base plan, again, a lot of red, spend reductions, better, but still not quite enough. And so this is the funding plan with those projected rate increases get us to those numbers. I mean, you can see all in debt service coverage at the end of the plan at 2 times it is good. I want to just show real quick visually cash. You can see the top line, that tan line is what we're projecting in the funding plan. So you can see that kind of, it doesn't quite go as low as the other lines, and then recovery on the cash side versus the red, which was the spend reductions plan, and then the blue is the base plan. So again, the funding plan includes those spend reductions that we talked about. It includes those reductions to headcount, and then layered on to it the rate adjustments in those future years. So just a summary, we show this each year, just kind of where we're at with this funding plan as presented. And again, all in debt service coverage, the lowest level is 1.48 in fiscal 27. I think that's acceptable, even though it's below board goal, because I don't think we need to go more than that. You can see the trajectory changing. Minimum cash, same. We're below minimum cash balance, but the trajectory changes and it gets us above it in fiscal 2030. The asterisk at the bottom of that is important, I think, to understand. Resolution 266 is what I keep talking about, where we've defined what our unrestricted cash balance is. And in that resolution, it says that if there are deficiencies in these balances, they will be corrected by increasing rates, fees, and other charges. That is defined within Resolution 266. It does not say, for example, to cut capital. And that's in line with what we think is smart as an institution. Couple things I want to show here, just as things have changed. Last year's funding plan to this year's funding plan. This chart, I apologize, it's small. There's a few more that are going to pop up. The blue was the prior funding plan cash balance compared to that. And then green is where we're at today. And there's a gap there is really caused by capital spending. We talked about that. One of the goals I talked about, we had R&R capital spend of over $100 million, which is a lot. Construction cost increases drive some of that, but it's also investment in our existing infrastructure. So it's good that we're able to and have been able to accomplish a lot and execute projects. But that has led to a drop in our cash balance. To kind of show it again, one of the other goals we're looking at is depreciation expense compared to repair and replace capital. And this chart shows that going back to 2021, the blue bar is depreciation expense. So you can see in 21 and 22, that was more than we spent. And then it flattened out, and then we exceeded it in 24 and 25. I don't think we're going to exceed it in 26, 27. We had some larger projects that were coming on. One of them was AMI. So getting those meters in the ground didn't require engineering support. So it wasn't limited by staff capacity to execute the project. We were able to spend money and get the meters in the ground. So that led to some of that. The Orange pump station was another one where it was a big project. That project's wrapping up. So there's not going to be the spend there. And I think we're going to come in pretty close to depreciation expense in future years on the capital side. I want to just let Danny talk real quick about kind of capital investment, what's coming and how we're thinking about our repair and replace capital.
Thanks, Matt. Just Danny Roder for the record. One of the things you'll notice there is that we had a couple of years where our R&R capital was low. But I would bet if we went back and looked, we actually spent quite a bit of capital because we were expanding our system. We were building some of those regional facilities to allow for regional growth. So it's a constant balance between the two of trying to keep ahead of the growth so that we don't slow anything down. We'll also pick up the pieces. And if you remember, I've shown this chart over the years of major facilities by a decade. And part of the balance that we're trying to deal with is build new facilities to serve growth. We have facilities that came during the 90s, 2000s boom, a ton of facilities that need major rehab or upgrades. And then you have those facilities that are built from the 50s and 60s that we're trying to outright replace. And so it's this kind of perfect mixture of trying to do it all at the right time and talk about, well, if we push that out a year, that might be acceptable, but the cost is getting increased by 5%, 10%. So I would bet that CCI curve that he was showing you on capital, our local cost increase on the water, wastewater infrastructure side is probably 10% over that. That's my estimate. So that's just something we're balancing and trying to always work around in terms of capital and our assets.
Yep. Danny, this shows total cash. So the chart immediately to the left is cash as compared to our minimum requirement. But I want to keep it in perspective that we still have a solid amount of cash on hand. And I think that's important. It mitigates risk. And what it also does, it informed our decision to not cut capital, because even though our cash balance is lowering and it's going below our minimum, we still have enough unrestricted cash to weather emergencies, other things that might come up to where we don't have to sacrifice on the capital side to hold on to cash. And so you can see this is the difference between last year's plan and this year's plan on the cash side. Those are the two lines there. So I just wanted to keep that into perspective, that even though we're seeing red and we're seeing big negative numbers, our total cash, because of some of the conservative reserves that we've set and the board has set over time, we're in a good place to be able to continue to invest while not having to hold off on doing capital to maintain adequate cash. Ratings. So these we've talked about already today. Just put this up there. This is from our PAPR. You can see Fitch has us at the highest, Moody's AA2 and S&P at AA+. Highly rated. Rating agencies, they care about these things. They look at us all, usually on an annual basis. Fitch does very consistent annual surveillance. S&P and Moody's is a little more sporadic. But they look at the things we're talking about today. They look at debt service coverage. They look at liquidity, how much debt do we have, revenue stability. That's kind of that. Is our revenue consistent? And then also what they look at is rate setting practices. And so they talk about this. They said, what is management and board able to do with rates in order to not cut on things like capital or still run an effective utility? And then also is there local support for that? Part of it is affordability too. So they talk about affordability. That's one of the things they've said about TMWA time after time, is that our rates are affordable. And so that's another thing that they talk about. And this matters. I mean, it's access to capital is important. So we have the ability to go borrow if we need to. We don't like to do that. As you know, we're paying down our debt, which is a great spot to be in. But if we had to, we can access capital markets with reasonable rates because we're highly rated. And I think public trust is important because we can look at ratepayers, and I've said this to ratepayers too, that I've talked to, and say, well, we present this financial information, but who's also looking at this are these rating agencies, and they're rating us highly because they believe us and they understand that what we're doing is good compared to the industry. And so I think that builds trust with the community, and I think it's something that board members can point to also. And then financial flexibility, benchmarking, again, it's comparing us to industry. Within the funding plan, there are some risks. So funding gap we talked about, it's improving. Inflationary price increases, inflation's cooling, but we don't know what's gonna happen. We know it's gonna be unpredictable, prices in the future, so that's a risk. A recession, if we were to see a local recession, what would that do to our connection fees? That's the new stuff. Would we see a drop in our connection fees, which would impact our cash? We wouldn't be going out building new facilities for that growth, but it would impact cash. So I think I see that as a risk. Opportunities, grant funding. Haven't included any grants that aren't awarded. If we're always looking for funding for projects that we're doing, especially projects we're already doing. So there could be their energy incentive funding for this. This one is I actually feel more confident that we will receive. It's going to be between $4 and $6 million. It's not in the plan, but this is Section 48 tax credits related to the renewable energy production at Orange Ditch. So we're working with Bailey as tax consultants to help us get these credits. We should, hopefully, if everything pans out, we should receive that money in a year or so from now. So that's great. That's an add to the plan. And then we have some opportunities for debt refunding. It's looking like right now we'll see savings if we do refund our 2025 and 2026 or 2015, 2016 series bonds. That's just a normal refunding, like a refinancing. Right now at current rates, it's pretty solid savings. I think it's 12% savings, which is really good. We usually execute anything that's over 3% savings. So look at doing that. And but I didn't include it because it's not certain and we don't know what rates are going to do. Although I think they'll hold and not be lower, which will make it even better. That'll happen in April 2026, most likely. And you'll hear about that as we get closer there. All right, I think we're almost there. This is an interesting one. This is talking about debt. This is actually looking out the next 10 years debt service. So the chart starts, if you can't see it, it's small, 2026, and then it ends in 2039. And the end of the plan is 2030. That's kind of where you see that those more yellowish, and the colors represent the different issuances of debt, but it's all debt service. And you can see in 2031, debt service increases. It increases about $5 million. So that's not in this plan because this plan ends in 2030. But I wanted to point this out that it's coming. So we do have an increase in our debt service in 2030 of about $5 million. So that debt service coverage number right at the end of the plan, it gets a hit because we got to spend $5 million more for a few years. But then on the backside of that, it's pretty exciting because then our debt service really drops. And as we go, and then this gives us flexibility to refund as well. So I thought this was a good one to look at because this is kind of what's coming long term. And we like to think long term, 5 years, but also 10 years, what's coming and how can we position ourselves so that the trajectory is right. And then this is just a table that sort of supports all the numbers more for reference in there, but you can see that's efficiency, revenue, funding gap there. So again, trajectory is improving by the end of the plan. We have 1 year on all-in debt service coverage that's below. I think that's acceptable. And then on the cash surplus, we're below, but then we recover there at the end. And I think those years that we're below is acceptable as well. Again, because we have a solid reserve, we have enough cash to operate, and I think it's okay. So that's it. So again, I think the motion is in the packet, but we're asking for approval of the funding plan, not approval of the rate increases. Those are contingent on coming back to the board a year from now.
Just a little bit on just overall philosophy. When we started looking at this, we didn't want to do anything. The baseline was do not jeopardize the reliability of our service that we have now. So even with those headcount reductions, spend reductions, that was the marching order was not to do anything that cuts below, our level of service. We didn't want to go towards mediocrity. We wanted to keep ourselves where we're at. And so staff really worked hard on that. Also, we're looking at, and I think Matt mentioned it, just drought. Can't predict, we can't control whether we come into a long-term drought when we have to do the odd thing for a business, which is to tell our customers not to buy our product. And so like in 2015, I think we called for conservation of 10%, just voluntary, and customers cut back by 17% total. And so that is the balance we're trying to strike too, is getting ahead of this before we come into a long-term drought, which we know will happen at some point. Thanks.
So thank you, Mr. Bowman. And just as now probably a quadruple reminder, the motion is not to actually set rates. It's to approve the funding plan, and the rates will come back to the board and updated information that's more relevant to that particular time period in August and September of 2026. So I'll open it up for any questions or discussion. Yes.
Just a
Ms. Hill.
random question. Historically, why did we not raise rates in 2018?
Yeah, what we had done in the past was we'd have a rate plan and then we look at it and part of it was we had a very healthy cash balance. And we said, I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to raise rates. And so we didn't do it then. We sort of deferred it and said, yeah, we don't need to.
Anything else? So hearing no other questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve the funding plan as presented on the condition that the forecasted rate increases in fiscal years 2027, 2028, 2029 are not being approved as part of the plan and will be completed by the board at a future meeting.
So we have a motion by Mr. Anderson. Do we have a second by Mr. Miguel Martinez? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your hard work on that, and making it so robustly, fun. Numbers of times.
Understandable.
No, I know we're laughing, but I mean it, because finance sometimes is,
It's fun.
it's fun. I'll move now to item number 14, which is the introduction and first reading of amendments to rule number 7, requirements for will serve commitment letters. So we have,
So Eddie Collier.
oh yes, there you are.
Resource Manager. And Sean Stoddard here, Senior Resource Economist.
Thank you.
This will not be as much fun as feels more like cruel and unusual.
It's fun.
I think it's fun for fun. So today's the, like you said, proposed changes to the Rule 7 water rights dedication requirement. I'll be presenting on a lot of Sean's heavy lifting here. His memo is attached to this item. It's a great nighttime reading. So presentation overview. So I'll go over the Rule 7 background and the current formulas that we're looking at. Again, we only did single family residential, that's SFR, and multifamily residential. We didn't look at the other formulas in that Rule 7. I'll be going over just a quick slide from our draft or official water resource plan now, and an excerpt from the at a glance. So that will also be covered. So current Rule 7 calculations, and again, Rule 7 is the volume of water rights that must be dedicated for growth, basically. So the single family residential is based on a formula, and that's based on the square footage of the lot size. And that formula is shown right there. All we do is plug in that lot size and it spits out the water rights required. The multifamily is a per unit rate, and it's 0.11 per apartment or per condo or townhouse. And then if there's landscaping, it goes under our landscaping calculations. We can do an actual, how many trees they have, how much lawn they have, etc. So that's how the water rights that we collect are calculated. So this is an excerpt from the at a glance that Carl went over today, and you have copies of. And it's just, this is just showing this just for trend. Over the last 20 years, usage has declined about 30%. So what we're talking about today, even though it's not a 30% reduction in the rates of water rights dedicated, it still follows this trend and is important to bring up. So not going to go into this. You have it in your packet there. So single family residential analysis. So Sean, the last time we updated this was in 2019. We're trying to do this every 3 to 5 years, and Sean's actually working on a process where it'll be a lot more automated. So we can kind of just maybe hit a button and it spits out what we should be at. We'll see. So what we did was we looked at homes built between 2016 and 2020. And we wanted to look at that, so we made sure that the landscape and everything is mature and stable. A lot of times homes will get built, not landscape for a few years, so we wanted to make sure that they were fully established. And then he looked at the next 4 years of usage. And we had a pretty big data set, 8,667 qualifying services in this parameter that he looked at. And we did a similar thing for the multifamily. I'll go over that later. This is basically the nutshell here of his analysis. You can see it's got the proposed Rule 7 formula in orange. It's got the current Rule 7 formula in black. And then it shows you the different data points that how the curve lines up and how it best fits the data that we have. So we have usage on the right and service counts on the left. And another thing, and I'll kick this off to Sean for a second here, but the majority of the services, 94% of our services are within that first 20,000 square foot lot size. So you can see how the curve really fits that very well, the new curve. And Sean, do you want to add anything on this?
Yeah, but I just want to kind of point out is each one of those dots represents the average for the water services in that particular lot size. And those blue bars, that gives you an idea how many lots were in that particular lot size. So if you kind of look at about 7,000 square feet, between the 5,000 and 10,000, you see a couple of the tallest bars there where we have approximately about 1,100 lots. And so those dots represent the average in each one of those bars. The orange dots is a lot size where the average is greater than Rule 7. And the blue dots are an average that's below the Rule 7 line. And so you can kind of see how, you know, the lion's share is truly that 94% of the service less than 20,000 square feet. You got a little bit in that next group, the 94 to 98%. And those larger lots, they're just random. Okay, but for the most part, we kind of strike a good line in the middle of them. And you can also see how close the lines are in terms of the current Rule 7 and the new proposed Rule 7. And this analysis really represents just a fine tuning of the rule, not so that doesn't really, so gap doesn't really grow over time. So we try to stay on top of it so that we're collecting in terms of water rights for a new housing unit, that which is really needed. So water can remain in the system until it actually is needed. So we're not tying up water rights unnecessarily.
So results. So you remember the single family residential formula. The main change in that is the 1,500 went to 1,900 in the formula there. There's also a small change we made to the one. It was 1.1 went to 1. We just kind of made that simpler. So again, for lot sizes below 35,000 square feet, the dedication is reduced on average of about 0.05 acre feet. And so, I mean, it's fairly small. It's nice to see something going down though these days. But it's a small reduction, like Sean was saying. And you know, if we sell about 500 acre feet of our Rule 7 a year. So we're looking at, you know, 50 acre feet a year. But that adds up over each year. So we want to make sure we're not over dedicating. And the table below shows we want to do a side-by-side comparison of the current Rule 7 and the proposed Rule 7 and show the difference is in acre feet of what we do collecting. So that's the delta between the two. And that goes all the way up to the 90,000 square foot lot size. Multifamily, we'll jump over to this. So same parameters. We looked at multifamily built between 2016 and 2020. We had 8,463 units analyzed through 627 multifamily meters. And the results of this analysis is it's going from that 0.11 per unit down to 0.1. So a 10% decrease in dedication per unit. Again, it's a small amount, but we want to make sure we're using our resources as smart as we can. So, and then I'll conclude. So in summary, we're proposing a change and reduction in dedication requirements. For the single family, it's typically about 0.05 per parcel. For the multifamily, it's 0.11 to it's that 0.01 acre feet per unit. And we're just trying to keep up with the recent building trends and water usage. And again, we're going to try to look at this every 3 to 5 years or more frequently as needed. We've sent this analysis off to the state engineer's office for their approval. We'll need to gain their approval as well. So that's all we have, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Vanderbilt.
How often do you guys look at industrial and commercial?
So those are based on actual usage. So we'll do either fixture counts on them and we'll come up with the usage amount, or if it's like a car wash, we've done our own analysis on how much car washes use per square footage and per technology and everything. And we will assess it based on what we see in our service area.
Okay.
And if we don't have anything in our service area, we'll look elsewhere. We'll go Vegas or we'll look elsewhere for similar types of businesses. But we'll usually base it on existing services, what they're using, dental office or whatever.
Okay, well, and then a follow-up to that, because the legislature passed some legislation regarding adaptive reuse of commercial into housing. Not only is that gonna affect sewer, but it will also affect water. So have you guys looked into that? Because that can possibly affect commercial. So I guess if that starts coming on, will you do a study faster than?
We would definitely look at any data we have on that matter, yeah.
Okay.
And if it's a condo or an apartment, we'd probably base it on our multifamily.
Okay.
I'd imagine that's what's
Well,
happening.
because what's happening is they're taking commercial property that's empty and allowing us to adaptive reuse it into housing. So yeah, so it would possibly be like condo townhome, but it's just more dense.
Right.
Commercial buildings usually only have 2 to 4 restrooms, and so it'll increase the number of restrooms and water usage. So
we would see that in a tenant improvement application, and we would catch any delta, or if there's actually an overage, we would catch that too.
Okay, great.
In dedications in the previous usage.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I was just gonna quickly summarize, those are all on a case by case basis.
Are they? Okay, perfect.
As an example, we just had the revival.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Where we looked at the existing usage, we said, okay, they're going from this to this, analyzed it, said, okay, there's no water rights to cover.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Anderson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. As far as the timing of this, when are you looking at? I mean, there's a lot of different switches that have to be moved before it's finally approved. But what would be the timing theoretically of this taking place? And then likewise, if I'm a developer, when would I be going, whoa, wait a minute, I'm gonna hold off until this goes through because it's gonna impact what I'm gonna have to do. And so I guess if you could help me understand the timing of it from TMWA's side, and then likewise, is it potentially we're gonna see projects paused, waiting for this to come through?
So go ahead.
Yeah, so the motion would be to refer it to a second reading. I'll talk about my GM report. We'll cancel the November meeting like we usually do and hold the December one early. So that would be the second reading of this proposed rule, and then as soon as we get state engineer approval, then it would be effective immediately. We're also planning to talk with the MAOP, BAN, others, just to get the word out that this is coming through. It's a positive. It means less water rights to be dedicated. I don't know that the delta is going to be that much meaningful from a project by project basis to make them change their thinking, but we'll make them aware.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So as Mr. Zimmerman just mentioned, the motion is a first reading. So the motion, I'll entertain that to be made if anybody would like to. So, okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries for the first reading. Thank you. We'll move now to the general manager's report. Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you, Chair Andrea. Thanks to the board. I mean, I know on the last couple board meetings, we've made it a point to make sure you were here. We appreciate it. We appreciate the time commitment. So thank you. And also thanks to staff and everybody that contributed to the goals and the results. I wanted to update the board a bit on the agenda item we had a few months ago, the Verdine Meadows Utility Company. So the Public Utilities Commission has approved their own staff's recommendation to do wholesale from TMWA. We don't know exactly what that process will look like yet. It'll probably be a 1 to 2 year process. But what I'll do is keep Chair Andriola updated as to how it's progressing, and then we'll talk about when it would be appropriate to bring an update back to this board. Might not be every month, but as material things happen, but it'll be a slow moving process. So I wanted to update you on that. Second, wanted to mention Cara Steeland. She was on Face the State with Ariana Bennett about a few weeks ago or a month ago, talking about the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership, and just did a great job. So check that out if you have time, and we can definitely send you the link. Third, I wanted to mention, so there's a gentleman in our distribution crew, Elio Colocho. He's a light foreman. He's from El Salvador. He's been with the company, I don't know, 15 years or so or more, maybe not. I didn't follow up. But I just wanted to celebrate that Elio passed his citizenship test a couple of weeks ago, and so he's now a U.S. citizen. Ryan Dixon in distribution has a light barbecue for him just to recognize that, because it's a big step. So wanted to congratulate Elio, and again, he's just an excellent part of the team there at TMWA. I mentioned earlier that we'd cancel the November board meeting, so December will be the next board meeting. And then I'd also like to turn it over to Ryan Dixon just to give a quick update and recognition on the advanced metering infrastructure, where we're at.
Yeah, you bet. And actually, Marcy and Matt, if you want to come up, that'd be great.
I can feel the excitement.
And the love. Want to go ahead and provide the update?
Amanda Pilot for the record. Good afternoon. I'm here just to give a quick AMI update. I'm happy to say that we are completed the project. Mumford finished their installs at the end of September and are no longer on site. TMWA will continue just to clean up the last few meters that we have, the troublesome ones, casinos, traffic, things like that. And then next steps for us would be encouraging our customers to sign up on the online portal to start looking at their leaks, helping them with their water usage, virtual water usage reviews that we can do here in the office. And then just efficiency in the field, responding to service calls, helping their customers, responding, move-ins, move-outs, and things like that. So I'm happy for the next steps.
And I just want to congratulate Amanda. It was not all her work, but this contract was entered pre-COVID. And so it's been a long haul to get where we're at. And it's been great at shepherding it through along with help from all the others. Thank you.
Go on vacation.
Yeah, I will. Thank
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Simon? Hearing none, we'll move to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Not anyone online wishing to provide public comment, please raise your hand. You do not.
Okay, hearing that we have no public comment, we'll move now to item 17, which are board comments and requests for future agenda items. Okay.
I'll just
Go ahead,
say-
Mr.
Yeah, I'll just say, I don't know about those that were at Western Regional Water Commission today, but about half of us of the electeds were, but it might be useful, Dawn, to have the presentation from the state climatologist at some point next year. It could even be a year from now at a similar meeting, you know, like this, or whenever it would work in your schedule, or you might just wanna bring Baker Perry in to meet with your own staff at one of your staff gatherings, but I think the information that he's bringing a whole new dynamism to the office and his projects that he plans, and they're gonna directly tie to your ability to do better forecasting and management. So might be something, a guest speaker you want at some point.
Thank you.
Throw that out there.
Thanks. Anything else? I just have a closing comment, two things. You know, putting on something like this, for those of us that have done this kind of strategic planning meeting and organize it, is a lot of work. And the enthusiasm and the transparency and all of the hard work that you all have put into this is appreciated. And I think we all echo that. So a big thank you to TMWA. So really thank you for everything. My last comment, I had a conversation with someone that I've known for over 30 years that I didn't know was actually the attorney at the time that formed TMWA. And it was a very interesting conversation, and the person shared how proud to see where it was and the heavy lift and those that actually helped with that, to see where it is and how it's just an exemplary organization in our community. And I think that's really a testament to all of you. So thank you for making some of the original folks who had this concept and the heavy lift they had, and you carrying that and in such a high standard. And it's really appreciated. And I was proud because she was talking about TMWA, and I had no idea. And so what a proud moment for all of you, to make it proud for all of us to be even associated with such a great group of people. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the lunch, and thank you for a great meeting. And if there isn't anything else, we're adjourned at 1:29.
Thank you, Madam Chair.